Chapter 709. The powers of the entire celestial eradication sword formation were condensed into this sword attack. Under the eruption of the all-conquering sword intent, the interference toward the heavenly thunders and terrestrial magnetism forces reached an extreme. The power of electromagnetism was the basic force that formed all matter in the world. It represented the structure of all matter. This all-conquering sword attack, which was powered by the powers of the entire celestial eradication sword formation, caused countless comprehensions to flash in Fang Xinjian's mind. With a single sword attack, the black and white light spheres were slashed and destroyed. At the next moment, the Thunder Calamity longsword slashed across the fifth prince's body, brushing past Fang Xinjian. With this sword attack, the fifth prince's physical body and nanotechnology armor were not damaged in the slightest. However, a lump of white martial will was slashed out, turning into countless light spots that plunged down toward the ground. This sword attack at the pinnacle of sword arts did not slash through the physical body. Instead, it slashed out Tian Yi's martial will and dealt him with serious injuries. Several hundred conferred knights in the entire Great Western City looked at this sword attack in great astonishment. With this sword attack, Fang Xinjian felt that he had come into contact with a hint of the nature of electromagnetism. Prince Philip's mouth was agape, and his eyes were filled with endless fanaticism and admiration. To be able to separate the martial will from the physical body with a single sword attack. This is a sword attack at the pinnacle of sword art. Regional Chief Benjamin's face was also filled with astonishment. Suddenly, he heard a commotion and turned to look, only to discover that this sword arts genius, who had sparred with the Supreme Chief, was already in tears. "Ha, to think that I'll be able to see this sword attack at the pinnacle of sword arts in my lifetime. I'll have no regrets even if I die." Zhou Xingwen, Rhoda, Fang Qian, and the others from the Great Western Region Regional Academy let out a deep breath. They looked at the sword-wielding figure in the sky with great astonishment, followed by great admiration. In the Great Western City, countless conferred knights from various influences lowered their heads silently, expressing their respect for this sword attack at the pinnacle of sword arts. The Fist Emperor appeared dejected. Before this sword attack at the pinnacle of sword arts, he could no longer summon up any will to resist. Fang Xinjian. Tian Yi's martial will continued to dissipate and weaken. In the blink of an eye, it landed on the ground, turning into a small light figure. When he raised his head with great difficulty, he discovered that Fang Xinjian had appeared before him with a small white dog. "What do you want?" Tian Yi suddenly had a bad premonition. However, he had been seriously injured by Fang Xinjian with a single sword attack, and his martial will had become extremely weak. Right now, his glow was only the size of a matchstick, and he was unable to resist at all. The Thunder Calamity in Fang Xinjian's hand flashed and tapped onto the small light figure that Tian Yi had taken on. In an instant, Tian Yi's martial will was sealed into the small white dog's body. One sword could sever the connection between the physical body and the will. One sword could place the will into the body of an animal. It was like performing surgery on the physical body and the will. At this moment, Fang Xinjian had a new breakthrough in his understanding of the way of the sword, electromagnetism, and the structure of matter. The celestial eradication sword technique and the all-conquering sword, which contained the profoundness of electromagnetism, had reached an unprecedented pinnacle. Tian, who had been placed into the body of the little white dog, instantly collapsed. "Am I not number one in the world? Shouldn't I be invincible? Why did I lose? Why did I fail?" Tian Yi's entire will instantly turned sluggish, and then he went unconscious. Fang Xinjian looked at the unconscious small dog in his hand and casually tossed it into Fang Qian's embrace. "Keep an eye on him. Don't let him starve to death." Fang Xinjian could tell that Tian Yi's background was very interesting and therefore wanted to capture him for questioning. As for the fifth prince, He lifted his head and looked toward the sky. The fifth prince's body was still standing in a daze in the sky. Fang Xinjian's earlier sword attack had not just slashed through Tian Yi's martial will. Earlier on, Tian Yi had been borrowing the fifth prince's powers. That sword attack had not only slashed through Tian Yi's martial will, but it had also slashed out the fifth prince's martial will and shattered it. At this moment, the fifth prince was only left with a small portion of his powers, which was hidden in the depths of his mind. When the people in the surroundings saw how Fang Xinjian had managed to seal his opponent's martial will into a dog's body with a single sword attack, they were even more astonished. This was a sword technique that was practically godly. Tyrant was taken aback. Then he was filled with endless excitement. As expected, I didn't make the wrong bet. Fang Xinjian's future is limitless. The fourth prince also looked at Fang Xinjian with a burning gaze, still in a state of astonishment from the two sword attacks from earlier. Even if the mystic abyss heavenly emperor surpasses Fang Xinjian in terms of power, his understanding of sword arts is probably no longer a match for Fang Xinjian. This person is a natural genius in sword art. No. I should say that he's a god among swords. The speed at which Tian Yi fainted was very fast. In just a few seconds, the stalwart Eidolon conviction had completely wiped out the memories of his earlier failure. He opened his eyes, and the corners of his lips curled up into a hint of a proud smile. Did I fall asleep again? I hope that in the process of sleeping, I didn't cause any damage to the surroundings. After all, my power is too great. Even some unconscious waves can easily cause immeasurable destructive prowess. Just as Tian Yi was thinking this, he was suddenly stunned. Why was the hand that was reaching out before him a dog's paw? He then reached out his other hand. It was still a dog's paw. What's going on? He wanted to let out a similar howl, but he heard a series of dog bark. Me? I've become a dog? Woof 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 woof. Tian Yi's mind instantly crashed once again, and he fell unconscious. The stalwart Eidolon conviction in his mind started to go through some strange changes. In the sky, the fifth prince had already sunk into a state of complete panic. He sensed that the power in his body was not even a match for the weakest Tier 1 divine-level expert. It was not even a match for some demigod-level expert. Damn Fang Xinjian. Damn Tian Yi. My power. My power has been taken away by him? The Fist Emperor had already dashed up, supported the fifth prince, and asked, "What's wrong? Are you all right?" Before the fifth prince could say anything, Fang Xinjian was already standing before the two of them. The fifth prince lifted his head and looked at Fang Xinjian with a savage expression. He gritted his teeth and said, "You crippled my martial arts?" The Fist Emperor was stunned. He scanned the fifth prince's body with his martial will, and his countenance immediately changed. Fang Xinjian said calmly, "I did it in passing. If you take the initiative to tell me about the origin of the armor, I can let you die more comfortably." Hearing that, the fifth prince laughed out loud. "Kill me? Fang Xinjian, let me tell you this. You can hurt me, humiliate me, and even cripple my martial arts. But kill me? Do you dare?" After saying that, he threw a mocking glance toward Fang Xinjian and said coldly, "Father has already attained Tier 5 of the divine level. He can ignore me and allow me to encounter setbacks, but if he were to kill me, I'm sorry. If you dare to make a move, he'll immediately kill you at light speed." With that, he looked at Fang Xinjian with a mocking gaze and said, "Do it, I'm afraid you won't. You can forget about killing me forever. This time around, it's my loss. Next time, I'll get my revenge. I'll destroy the entire great western city, and let you feel what true pain is." Alexander had attained Tier 5 of the divine level, and the fifth prince was certain that Fang Xinjian would not dare to really kill him. Moreover, it was great that the other party dared to make a move. He couldn't wait to borrow Alexander's hand to kill the other party. After all, the power and sword arts Fang Xinjian displayed were too terrifying. The fifth prince had already lost the confidence to defeat him and only wanted to rely on Alexander to kill him. Chapter 710. However, the people on the ground had no idea what was happening in the sky. Regional Chief Benjamin retreated slowly, as if he had instantly aged by 10 years. With such sword arts, the great western region, the first prince no longer has any hope. In this battle, Fang Xinjian has completely established his position at the pinnacle of sword art. In the entire empire, probably only the sword of the secular world can be a match for him. Asto sighed and left as well. Let's go. As long as Fang Xinjian is still alive, the first prince really won't stand a chance. On the ground, countless people were still in great astonishment from Fang Xinjian's sword attack. Countless swordsmen looked at Fang Xinjian in the sky with tears streaming down their faces. It was as if they had been completely moved by that sword attack which had sliced through one's physical body and will. From today onward, Fang Xinjian's prestige in the sword arts domain would be over 10 times or even 100 times greater than before. It would even surpass the School of Sword Arts. Only the School of Sword Arts' former Supreme Chief, one of the Empire's 10 great divine-level experts in the past, and the sword of the secular world, who had now become the Empire's prince, would be considered a match for him. In the sky, the fifth prince did not care about all these. His countenance was savage, and his eyes were blood-red. His hatred toward Fang Xinjian had reached an extreme. Simultaneously, he also thought that Alexander would be able to take down Fang Xinjian. It was because, other than being able to distort space, Tier 5 divine-level experts could also compress, stretch, and fold space. They could even create alternate spaces called divine countries to use in battle. Such an ability would give them an absolute advantage against experts below Tier 5 of the divine level. After all, with space being compressed and folded, even light-speed attacks would not be able to hit their bodies. With the divine countries descending, the one being attacked would only be able to take a beating and find it hard to retaliate. It was just like the previous time when Fang Xinjian had been trapped in Alexander's divine country and could only watch as Jacob was rescued. However, what the fifth prince did not know was that in order to go up against Alexander, Fang Xinjian had specially integrated the Thunder Calamity into it, strengthening the prowess of the Celestial Eradication sword formation. He had then strived for Tier 3 of the divine level, merging his spirit and body as one. His will and body had become one, turning into the true heaven-connecting sword physique. Right now, even if the Black Mage King or the Gold Mage King were to come, he would not show any signs of fear, let alone Alexander. Looking at the fifth prince's provocative expression, Fang Xinjian flicked the Thunder Calamity longsword in his hand and said calmly, "Since Alexander rushed over to stop me, I'll just kill him as well. Since you're so straightforward with your words, then use your life to pay for it." At the next moment, thunderous sword marks flashed on the fifth prince's body. Right now, Fang Xinjian, who was holding onto the Thunder Calamity, performed the all-conquering sword and had the reinforcement from the Celestial Eradication sword formation. His prowess had reached an unbelievable level. At the same time as sword light flashed, the nanotechnology armor was sliced into pieces. The armor, which could allow a Tier 3 divine-level expert to stand at the pinnacle of power, was sliced through easily. "Stop!" The Fist Emperor let out an enraged bellow and his Azura physique appeared. He similarly attacked Fang Xinjian with 6 all-conquering sword intent, showing off in front of an expert. Faced with the sword intents that the Fist Emperor simulated and attacked, Fang Xinjian swept out coldly with his sword. In that instant, the nanotechnology armor shattered, his physical body broke down, and his will was shaken. With a single sword attack, the Fist Emperor, who had already been seriously injured, was killed. This expert, who had dominated the world for several decades and was one of the Empire's 10 great divine-level experts, as well as the ruler of the Great River Alliance, the #1 underground influence in the Empire, was slashed into dust before everyone's eyes. The several hundred experts who were watching the battle fell silent, and a feeling of sympathy flashed in their minds. To think that such a powerful divine-level expert had been swept away like dust. How terrifying and tragic was this! Looking at Fang Xinjian, who was holding onto the sword, everyone's hearts trembled. It was as if a divine sword was hanging above their heads. After Fang Xinjian killed the Fist Emperor with a single sword attack, he held onto the nanotechnology armor that he had sliced off from the fifth prince's body and casually tossed it to the ground. He turned and looked at the fifth prince, and a hint of graveness flashed in his eyes. His earlier sword attack had really wanted to kill the fifth prince. The reason why he had only sliced off the nanotechnology armor was because there was someone who had protected the fifth prince. Waves of majestic domineering aura appeared on the fifth prince's body, and a golden light that was like the aura of a ruler encompassed the fifth prince's body. It was this gush of martial will that had fended off Fang Xinjian's attack earlier. This made Fang Xinjian feel that there was an endless distance between him and the fifth prince's sword attack. It was only then that he retreated and killed the Fist Emperor in passing. The fifth prince looked at the golden light on his body in pleasant surprise and shouted, "Father, is that you?" The golden light on his body condensed, then recombined and transformed, turning into a human body. It was the ability of a Tier 3 divine-level expert to fuse the physical body and martial will together. The eyes of the man who had taken on human form were cold and passionate, filled with scorching heat and coldness. He seemed to be emotional yet also emotionless, filled with the contradictions and mysteriousness of kindness and evil. His hands were placed behind his back, and his strong back was straightened. His shoulders were extremely broad, as if they were holding up the entire sky. The person who had rushed over and fended off Fang Xinjian's attack was the Empire's emperor, the leader of the Krieg royal family, Alexander. Fang Xinjian had been prepared for this since a long time ago. He also had the sudden inspiration ability and understood the other party's means too well. As long as the other party wanted to protect the fifth prince, then Fang Xinjian would definitely be able to rush over before the other party was killed. As Alexander's body recombined, streams of sword light shot out. The entire sky was dyed golden, and even the ground and the city's buildings seemed to have been dyed in a layer of golden paint. A domineering and majestic power instantly swept out within a range of several tens of kilometers, slowly trembling as Alexander breathed. He was like the legendary god among the gods, the King of Kings. He stood quietly in the sky, accepting the worship of countless people. At this moment, everyone felt that their lives were being controlled by Alexander. Their hearts beat according to his breathing, and their lives circulated according to his thoughts. What kind of terrifying power is this? Prince Philip looked at the golden figure in the sky in great astonishment. Alexander, to think that you've reached such a level? Is this the power of a Tier 5 divine-level expert? Father. The fourth prince also wore a horrified expression. He could not sense any familiar fatherly love from the other party. He only felt that aloof and powerful presence that was as high up as that of the god. So powerful. Tyrant let out a breath and said, "This feeling is even stronger than the sword formation that Xinjian performed earlier." His eyes were filled with worry. Countless people were immersed in the majesty brought about by the power. As the nanotechnology armor on the fifth prince's body shattered, people started to recognize the fifth prince's identity. That silver-armored man is the fifth prince? To think that the person fighting against Fang Xinjian is the fifth prince? That's right. The fifth prince and the Fist Emperor are sworn brothers. That's why they're here to fight Fang Xinjian together? To think that Fang Xinjian wants to kill the fifth prince. Now that His Majesty has been alerted, what should we do? The majesty of the power, as well as the authority that the Krieg royal family had established over the past 200 years, caused countless people on the ground to fall into a state of panic when they saw the fifth prince and Alexander in the sky. This was especially so in the Great Western Region Regional Academy. Zhou Xingwen, Rhoda, Fang Qian, and the other subordinates of Fang Xinjian all wore terrified expressions. After hearing the words of Philip, Tyrant, and the others, they looked at Fang Xinjian worriedly. Fang Qian sighed and said, "Are we finally going to be attacked by the strongest expert in this country? Xinjian, will you be able to hold on?" Chapter 7:11. In the sky, chaos, which Lamia shook her head and said, "I didn't expect Fang Xinjian's strength to have reached such a level. He's at Tier 3 of the divine level, and the prowess of that sword formation has also exceeded my expectations. Especially the few sword attacks he performed at the end. He has already grasped a bit of the profoundness of electromagnetism. It's really astonishing." Next to Lamia, the other chaos witch, Serene, said, "But he still came out too early. His talent is really powerful, but his foundation is still a little lacking when compared to ancient legacies like the mages and the ancient path of hell. Alexander is also really unfathomable. To be honest, his reaching Tier 5 of the divine level has exceeded our plans." "Tier 5 of the divine level," Lamia said with a sigh. "Tier 5 of the divine level allows one to be flexible and unrestrained. Distance is no longer a problem. With a single thought, a short distance becomes a world apart, and a small area is as far as the world. Those below Tier 5 of the divine level have no means of resistance at all." The two Chaos Witches had seen the series of battles that Fang Xinjian had fought in the sky above the Great Western Region. Although they had never participated in any battles, their judgment was extremely good. They were able to tell Fang Xinjian's current condition immediately. Selene said, "With that sword formation of his and his sword art's realm that has come into contact with electromagnetism, Fang Xinjian will probably be able to get the upper hand against Alexander in an ordinary battle. However, if Alexander starts to expand and contract space and summon the divine country, he won't stand a chance." In the battlefield, the fifth prince looked at Fang Xinjian with a vicious expression. However, with Alexander's arrival, he did not rush to speak. He only looked forward to Alexander taking revenge for him, killing Fang Xinjian, and snatching his power, resources, and wealth. Fang Xinjian's eyes still showed no signs of backing down. He looked straight at Alexander like a long sword that pressed forward with an indomitable will. The Thunder Calamity longsword in his hand flashed with sword light, seeming to become even sharper. "Alexander, are you going to stop me?" Alexander did not reply immediately. Instead, he lowered his gaze and said with a sigh, "Fang Xinjian, I originally admired your talent and didn't want to kill you. However, you've continuously humiliated my Krieg faction. Could it be that you really think that you're invincible with a sword in hand?" As he spoke, the clouds and the ground covered in golden light began to shake. It was not really the clouds or the ground that were shaking, but the entire space was shaking. It was constantly expanding and contracting, giving off the feeling that the world was shaking. With a single sentence, the heavens and earth shook. Many of the experts watching the battle were overwhelmed with shock. This was already a realm that only existed in myths and legends. Only those legendary ancient experts, the wise monarchs who founded a country, had displayed such inhuman power in history. "Today, I will completely subdue you and suppress you within my god country. I will intimidate the world and sweep away all evil." In that instant, the world began to spin, and the wind and clouds seethed and changed. The entire Great Western City, and the area within the Great Western Region Regional Academy suddenly changed from a blue sky, white clouds, and lush greenery to a stretch of scorched land. Waves of the smell of lava and sulfur came gushing over, and large areas of volcanic ash soared into the sky. The overwhelming volcanic ash covered the sky, causing the entire world to turn dark. In the blink of an eye, it was as if everyone had entered hell from the mortal world. Philip frowned, and his gaze was extremely solemn. Is this Alexander's god country? I can sense a very powerful will lingering within it. Every inch of space here is condensed with his martial will. Tyron's gray will rippled out and instantly transmitted out. The density of ether particles is too thin. If we battle here, our battle prowess will be weakened by more than one-fold. The fourth prince's palm cut across the air, and felt layers of distorted light rays surrounding his palm. Space, distance, and light rays are all misaligned. Everyone, don't move. Right now, the direction and distance that you're looking at through the light rays are all wrong. Everyone looked at this scene in great astonishment. A Tier 5 divine level expert had the ability to summon a god country and change the world. No one could muster up any will to resist. Fang Qian, Zhou Xingwen, and the others looked at Fang Xinjian, who was in the sky with worried expressions. The fifth prince smiled coldly and said, Fang Xinjian, are you still going to stubbornly resist? A Tier 5 divine level expert can change the world, be flexible, and form a world of their own. What are you going to use to fight against us? Fang Xinjian did not say a word. 3 white bone short swords appeared behind his back, spinning like a circular fan. The glow of the Thunder Calamity longsword in his hand became even more dazzling, as if wanting to gather all the powers of the entire celestial eradication sword formation onto the sword. Cut the crap. Take a sword attack from me. The Thunder Calamity longsword soared into the sky, slashing out in the fifth prince's direction with a world-rending prowess. All of Fang Xinjian's spirit, will, and power seemed to have been integrated into this sword attack, and the all-conquering sword intent was unleashed to an extreme. Physical particles were slashed apart, light rays were slashed apart, and martial will was slashed apart. Under this sword attack, light and shadow disappeared, leaving only a vast expanse of darkness that gushed out toward the fifth prince. However, at the next moment, the darkness came to a stop, stopping before the fifth prince and Alexander. Or rather, it was not that it had come to a stop. It was as if the space of 1 meter in front of them had become as far away as the horizon. Fang Xinjian sensed that his power was still charging forward and extending. However, no matter how much power he seethed, he was unable to cross this 1 meter distance. The seething darkness was like a big pancake that kept on compressing in that 1 meter of space. However, it was unable to advance in the slightest. Alexander said calmly, Tier 5 of the divine level allows one to control space. The 1 meter in front of me right now has in fact been extended to a distance of 10 million lis. Are you able to pierce through it? Fang Xinjian's countenance changed, and he retreated rapidly. The Thunder Calamity longsword drew out a graceful curve, as if it had slashed out a crack in space and pierced out toward Alexander's back. Alexander! His current strength is even more unfathomable than before. The divine country is over 100 times more complicated than before. However, with his earlier move, it looked as if he had instantly become flat. It was because the space he was in had also been lengthened. The space had been lengthened, and it had originally taken several tens of seconds for each meter to be moved. This made Fang Xinjian look like a thin pancake. When he pierced out with his sword, the space in front and behind connected, and the tip of the sword even pierced into his back. Fang Xinjian's brows twitched, and the Thunder Calamity longsword brought about a myriad of illusions. He instantly shattered, turning into streams of sword light that extended out at light speed. However, even at light speed, it was merely 300,000 kilometers per second. When each meter of the surrounding space was extended to a distance of 10 million kilometers, his movements looked like that of a flying insect. When the surroundings were all connected together, no matter how he darted out, he would only return to his original spot. Therefore, Fang Xinjian changed his sword move and started to perform the infiltrating void sword intent. However, with the space being changed, the gaps between spaces would naturally change as well. Fang Xinjian darted out left and right, but he was still unable to do anything. Chapter 7:12. Seeing how Fang Xinjian, who had killed the divine-level expert earlier, continued to perform his sword arts but was still unable to break free, everyone present was left speechless. This is the power of a Tier 5 divine-level expert? With a single thought, he can change the world, forming a world of his own. The space has also been completely changed. Amidst everyone's astonishment, sword light flashed, and Fang Xinjian condensed his body once again. His countenance was extremely grim. He raised the Thunder Calamity longsword high up, and the Celestial Eradication sword formation was activated at full power. However, it was not slashing but purely attacking with brute force. He wanted to use his greatest power to smooth out the chaotic structure of the space. It was like shaking up a bed forcefully and smoothing out a messy bed. As this sword slashed out, each inch it moved was different from the darkness in the past. As an eruption of pure brute force, each inch brought forth a dazzling light and heat. It was like an exploding planet, releasing its power fearlessly. This was also the method Fang Xinjian had thought of to break through the divine country previously. He wanted to use absolute power to make up for the lack in his realm. Under the full-powered eruption of the Celestial Eradication sword formation, the space started to tremble and bend, as if it was being smoothed out bit by bit. The changed spatial structure started to return to normal, and the stretched space was shaken back to its original state. The white light seemed to be purifying the entire hell's space. At the sight of this scene, Philip and the others revealed expressions of joy as if they had seen the light of hope. However, Alexander's countenance remained calm. "Do you think that you're the only one who has a formation? Have a taste of my ancient path of hell's secret technique. The infernal hell's diagram." As Alexander flicked his 10 fingers, the space started to seethe like water ripples. Cracks that could be seen by the naked eye appeared on Fang Xinjian's body, extending out to a range of several lis in the blink of an eye. Front, back, left, right, up, down. The 6 directions were all turned upside down. Fang Xinjian's body seemed to have been split up into several 100,000 parts, each floating in the sky. He was like a Rubik's Cube that had been messed up. In fact, his body was still one entity, but when looking at it with the naked eye, he seemed to have been split up due to the messy space. The spatial structure suddenly became 10,000 times more complicated. The space, which had started to return to normal under Fang Xinjian's full power, once again became messed up. He could only see the white light spreading inch by inch. Each inch took several minutes to spread, sometimes even more than 10 minutes. It would probably take several years or even decades for him to break through. Seeing that Fang Xinjian was completely trapped by the space, the countenances of everyone in the academy turned ashen. The 4th prince staggered a little, and his countenance turned extremely grim. The brows of Fang Qian, Rhoda, Wang Xiaoyan, and the others trembled, not knowing what to do. Fang Xinjian was their backbone. If Fang Xinjian were to fall, they would find it hard to imagine what kind of ending would be waiting for them. Fang Xinjian had too many enemies: the royal family, the mages, and various divine-level experts. No one would show him any mercy. Just thinking about this made everyone break out in a cold sweat. Alessandra said calmly, "Your swordsmanship has indeed reached the pinnacle of the world, but your greatest weakness is your insufficient cultivation. He can't even control space, so what if his swordsmanship is profound?" Ha 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 ha, Fang Xinjian. The 5th prince looked at the trapped Fang Xinjian, and the complacency and ecstasy in his eyes seemed to have materialized. "Do you really think that you're already unrivaled in the world? How do you feel now? Before us, you don't even have the right to escape. Father, kill him." The 5th prince immediately advised Alessandra, wanting to kill Fang Xinjian. However, Alessandra shook his head and did not do so. He still needed Fang Xinjian to help him complete the evil god ritual. Alessandra's expression remained indifferent. It was as if suppressing a sword arts master like Fang Xinjian was not enough to cause his expression to fluctuate too much. Fang Xinjian, you'll need about 10 years to break through the infernal hell diagram. Therefore, you should just stay here. When the evil god ritual starts, I'll let you out. If you assist me well, it's not that I can't spare your life. A domineering intent gushed into Fang Xinjian's brain, along with the information. It was as if the gods high up were reading out a divine decree, or as if a king who ruled over the mortal world had given out a decree. With a series of astonishing means at Tier 5 of the divine level, Alessandra's disposition of being high up, ruling over everything in the world, and neither good nor evil, grew increasingly intense. In the distance, chaos which Serene, who had not been discovered by anyone, nodded and said, as expected, although Fang Xinjian's aptitude is extraordinary, he's still unable to break through the restrictions of Tier 5 of the divine level. After all, there's a qualitative leap from Tier 5 of the divine level. It's not something that can be attained purely through sword arts or power. The other chaos which, Lamia, sighed, nodded and said, even though Fang Xinjian's matter has been settled, he won't be able to strive for a higher realm in Alessandra's divine country. In the end, he'll participate in the evil god's summoning ritual in his current state. However, Alessandra's strength has slightly surpassed our expectations. We must think of a way to suppress him. Serene nodded in agreement and said, the fact that he was able to come over to suppress Fang Xinjian at this juncture shows that his strength has grown. It's probably also related to the Shang behind him. This organization that shouldn't have appeared seems to be hiding many means that we don't know about. The two Chaos Witches started to discuss how to weaken Alessandra's means after Fang Xinjian was suppressed. Just then, Fang Xinjian was immersed in a chaotic space. This was the first time that his entire body had stayed in an area with such severe spatial disorder. Every inch of his body was being stretched and reorganized by different spaces. He could sense that his body was still in a state of one body, yet he was unable to differentiate his directions. The entire situation seemed to have turned into a state of chaos in his eyes. The all-conquering sword, which exerted the greatest amount of power, was able to stabilize these spaces. However, they were too slow. However, Fang Xinjian's talent had truly surpassed everyone's imagination. Just as everyone thought that he had been suppressed, Fang Xinjian, who had fallen into a chaotic space, gained a deeper comprehension toward space. The all-conquering sword represents the power of electromagnetism, and the strongest force against space should be the astral forces and gravity. The various martial arts of the myriad stars palace, the melancholic monarch's prodigious astral divine powers, various gravitational forces, and sword techniques related to gravity flashed rapidly in Fang Xinjian's mind. In the end, they turned into a stream of infiltrating void sword intent. Simultaneously, he slowly spat out a longsword from his mouth. It was a longsword that looked like a withered tree branch. It had 7 points and was completely black. It was as if there were countless vengeful spirits crying out in it. The moment it came into his hand, Fang Xinjian could sense that it weighed over 100,000 tons. Wang Xiaoyan and Fang Qian looked at the longsword that had suddenly appeared and exclaimed, "It's the Abyss!" The Abyss longsword was a level 34 divine remains equipment that they had modified through the Hell's white bone armor. However, it had not been completed and should still be in the laboratory. Then there could only be one reason. Under the guidance of sudden inspiration, Fang Xinjian had taken this longsword from the Great Western Region Regional Academy before joining the battle. Chapter 713. At the instant the Abyss longsword appeared before Fang Xinjian, a white bone short sword on Fang Xinjian's back shattered. At the next moment, a stream of infiltrating void sword intent gushed into the Abyss longsword. The infiltrating void sword intense ability to penetrate space and move through spatial gaps. The true profoundness lies in gravity. Waves of comprehension flashed rapidly in Fang Xinjian's mind. At the next moment, the infiltrating void sword intent had completely integrated with the abyss longsword. The Hell's white bone armor possessed outstanding defensive prowess and the ability to control space like a Tier 5 divine level expert. In the past, when the first prince performed it, Fang Xinjian had used his full power but was still unable to break through that thin layer of spatial barrier. It was because it contained a great distance. Right now, after the Hell's white bone armor had turned into the abyss longsword, it also possessed a hint of the aura of space or gravity. When the infiltrating void sword intent gushed into it, the abyss longsword finally unleashed an unprecedented power after bearing Fang Xinjian's sword intent. The celestial eradication sword formation changed once again, and all the powers were channeled into the abyss longsword in Fang Xinjian's hand. The fifth prince looked at this scene in astonishment, and Alexander's expression also turned solemn. At this moment, he sensed an intense threat from Fang Xinjian. "Alexander, do you really think that I've lost to you?" Before the battle started, I had already sensed where my chance of victory was. Could it be that you didn't sense it with your sudden inspiration? Alexander's countenance sank. At the next moment, he saw the abyss longsword being raised high up, and the entire longsword emitted endless gravitational waves. Under the guidance of the gravitational waves, the surrounding space emitted waves of strange waves, just like ripples on the surface of water. "I have a sword that can slash the world." The sword intent brought along Fang Xinjian's will and shot out in all directions. Under everyone's astonished, terrified, nervous, and surprised gazes, the abyss longsword came down and then turned into a series of phantom images, merging into space and dissipating. Gravity was the bending of an object's mass to spacetime. When Fang Xinjian's infiltrating void sword intent carried a little bit of the profoundness of gravity, the infernal hell diagram before him was no longer unsolvable. At the same time that the abyss longsword dissipated, the longsword had already passed through the chaotic space. At the next moment, layers and layers of stacking sword light burst out from the fifth prince's body, and over half of his martial will was instantly shattered. However, before he was about to be killed, he was still released from the divine country by Alexander. Fang Xinjian. Alexander was finally no longer as indifferent as before. Fury surfaced in his eyes, along with a hint of disbelief. "You actually broke the infernal hell diagram." Fang Xinjian waved his sword fingers and boundless sword intent was transmitted through space. A dazzling sword light exploded on Alexander's body. The sword light collided with the martial will on the surface of Alexander's body. However, at the next moment, it pierced through the martial will and slashed onto Alexander's body. Right now, Fang Xinjian's infiltrating void sword had reached a new level. He no longer needed to pass through spatial gaps and could transmit his attacks directly through space as a medium. Almost all defensive means were useless before his infiltrating void sword intents, and one could only use their physical bodies to fend them off. Alexander's body instantly trembled, and a myriad of layers of sword light burst out from his body. His countenance changed drastically, as if he found it hard to believe that Fang Xinjian could attack him and even attack his body. The chaos which was stunned. "How can there be such a sword technique in this world?" Serene cried out in astonishment. "This is no longer a sword technique. He has surpassed sword techniques." Golden light flashed, and violent powers smashed onto Fang Xinjian's body. However, they were still unable to stop the infiltrating void sword intents from exploding in Alexander's body. Moreover, with the reinforcement from the celestial eradication sword, the destructive prowess of Fang Xinjian's sword arts was not any weaker than his fist arts. Everyone on the ground was completely stunned by this scene. No one had expected that Fang Xinjian's sword arts could still improve further and even break free from the restraints of space. With a furious bellow, Alexander's silhouette moved with a flash. At the next moment, everyone returned to the real world, leaving Fang Xinjian behind in the divine country. The fifth prince had been sent out earlier and was currently so weak that he was not even comparable to a level 29 conferred knight. When he saw Alexander appear, he asked anxiously, "Father, what's wrong?" Alexander's countenance was grim, and his heart kept on seething. This Fang Xinjian's rate of improvement is too fast. Right now, I can only leave him in the divine country. At the thought of the various treasures he had in the divine country, he could not help but feel his heart bleeding. Damn it. If I were to go back now, I'll only be able to fight it out with him. This will be too disadvantageous for the evil god ritual in the future. The Mage Association was eyeing him with hostility, and Alexander was not willing to deplete his powers at this moment. He had planned on relying on his advantage as a Tier 5 divine level expert to suppress Fang Xinjian in the divine country. However, he had not expected that his opponent's sword arts would be able to break free from the restraints of space. Right now, he felt that Fang Xinjian was like a ferocious beast trapped in a cage, wanting to turn his divine country upside down. There were many treasures from the Krieg royal family in there. But it's still fine. As long as he's in the divine country, he won't be able to come out. When the evil god ritual is over. At the thought of this, the killing intent in Alexander's eyes seemed to have materialized. Don't worry. I've trapped him in the divine country. Without my control, it's impossible for him to come out. Hearing that, the fifth prince let out a soft exhale. That's good. Simultaneously, in the divine country, Fang Xinjian's palms kept changing, and the two white bone short swords, Thunder Calamity and Abyss, formed a circle. Under the seething gravitational waves, the circle formed by the four swords became increasingly smaller and more circular. There were even thunderbolts seething in the center of the sword circle. The infiltrating void sword intents are not only able to allow sword intents to penetrate space, they should also be able to. In that instant, the spinning sword circle turned into a space-time passageway, penetrating through the divine country and heading toward the sky above the great western region. With a soft swoosh, Fang Xinjian instantly passed through the sword circle and appeared before Alexander. Looking at the astonished father and son duo, Fang Xinjian flicked his finger, and the infiltrating void sword intents exploded in the fifth prince's body. "How dare you!" Alexander let out an explosive bellow. Seeing that the fifth prince's martial will had once again been slashed in half and was about to die, Alexander finally kept the fifth prince's remnant will into the divine country. By then, the fifth prince was already so weak that he was not even comparable to a level 20 conferred knight. Fang Xinjian's gaze was cold. Without saying a word, he slashed out another sword attack toward Alexander. "You might be able to save him once or twice, but can you save him forever?" Alexander let out a cold snort, and his golden will turned into a flaming hell. He sent out an overturned hell to suppress the fifth prince. Moreover, this attack had the Tier 5 divine level expert's ability to control space integrated into it. Under the stacking layers of chaotic space, its prowess was increased by 10 times. However, when faced with Fang Xinjian's infiltrating void sword, which had once again broken through its limits, the changes in space were already meaningless. It was because his infiltrating void sword intents could transmit through space as a medium, penetrating almost all attacks and defenses. Boom! The power of the overturned hell smashed onto Fang Xinjian's body without any reservations, causing 2 cracks to appear on his heaven-connecting sword physique. Concurrently, the infiltrating void sword intents also exploded on Alexander's chest, and an additional sword mark appeared on his chest. However, neither Fang Xinjian nor Alexander had any intention of backing down. Alexander pressed down with another overturned hell, and Fang Xinjian once again sent out a myriad of infiltrating void sword intents explosively. The space distorted, and sword intents flashed wildly. Both of them ignored the injuries on their bodies and once again attacked wildly toward each other's bodies. There seemed to be a myriad of thunderclaps exploding in void space, and the entire sky above the great western region was swept away, leaving no clouds in sight. After 7 consecutive exchanges, the space in the sky was in a state of chaos, and the entire atmospheric layer was slashed into pieces. Fang Xinjian's entire body was shattered, covered in cracks like a cracked gem. Alexander was also covered in sword marks, having been invaded by sword intents from both inside and outside. He was like an old and broken puppet. Both of their bodies were no longer purely made of flesh and blood, but conjured physiques that were a combination of wills and physical bodies. They would not bleed when they were injured, but they would keep on cracking and shattering. After the 7 exchanges, Alexander took a long look at Fang Xinjian. Without saying a word, he disappeared with a flash of golden light. The Empire's king, the #1 person in the Empire for several decades, and the current strongest expert in the ancient path of hell, Alexander, had been pushed back by Fang Xinjian. At this moment, the entire world fell silent. Everyone looked at that figure in the sky as if they had lost their voices, witnessing this historic scene. 4 streams of sword light circled around Fang Xinjian, and sword cheese soared into the sky as if they were going to sweep through the world. Philip mumbled, "Godly sword arts. A true godly sword arts. To think that father has been pushed back as well." The 4th prince said in disbelief, "From today onward, Fang Xinjian will truly be one of the top 20 or even top 10 experts in the world. He will suppress others, and his sword arts are peerless." Very soon, the news of Fang Xinjian and Alexander having exchanged 7 moves and coming to a draw spread throughout the entire empire, as if it had grown wings. The empire was shaken, and everyone fell silent. Chapter 7:14. As the news of Fang Xinjian defeating Alexander spread out rapidly, the entire empire was in an uproar. Countless influences and experts were astonished by Fang Xinjian's power. At this moment, history had once again changed because of a single person's power. Sword Overlord Fang Xinjian's name spread like wildfire, and he became the representative of top-notch sword arts in the world. At the location of the full moon shrine in the Xingwu region, the entire sky seemed as if it was burning. Amidst the flames, a bright moon shrouded the sky above the full moon shrine, turning into a light screen that encompassed the entire full moon shrine's base. Streams of flames descended from the sky, smashing toward the light screen like a meteor shower. Each attack was as if the world was collapsing, and the repercussions of the attacks brought up ripples in space. However, no matter how much the attacks were controlled, they still turned the area within a range of 10 lis into barren land. The land was as dry as a desert, and the surface of the ground had even sunk by over 50 meters, leaving only the full moon shrine standing proudly. Despite this, the light screen that encompassed the shrine was getting thinner and thinner. It trembled incessantly as if it would collapse at any moment. Clearly, under the continuous attacks, it would not be able to hold on for much longer. The crowd in the surroundings was over 10 lis away, surrounding the mountains. They were all experts from the various factions in the Xingwu region. However, they were merely surrounding the full moon shrine. It was because they were not the main force in the siege against the full moon shrine this time around. They were only here to watch the battle, to witness the rise of the new master of the Xingwu region. The Xingwu region's governor lifted his head and looked into the sky. He saw 3 men floating in void space. The man in the lead had 2 curved horns on his head, and there was a thick tail growing out from his tailbone. The tail, which was 2 meters long, would occasionally lash out at the air, releasing thunderous explosive sounds. It was this monster who emitted terrifying flames time and time again, causing the people of the full moon shrine to be unable to leave. The The Xingwu region's governor sighed and said, "These mages are really unbridled. Right now, out of the 8 regions in the world, the other regions have probably all fallen into the control of the Mage Association." As he spoke, his eyes were filled with worry and despair. The knights and conferred knights from the various factions and clans looked at the 3 terrifying silhouettes in the sky. They also felt the same way. The knights were completely suppressed by the wizards in such an unscrupulous manner, which made their hearts bleak. The old man from the battle hall also brought a few disciples to watch this battle. When they saw that the full moon shrine had no way to resist and could only passively defend, the desolation in their eyes grew increasingly intense. A disciple beside him said dejectedly, "Master, are knights really not as good as wizards?" The old man wanted to encourage his disciples. However, when he saw the desire in his disciples' eyes as they looked at him and recalled their performance over the past few days at the full moon shrine, he merely exhaled and was unable to say a single word. The black-robed mages had only been here for 3 days. On the first day, they had already seriously injured the blue sacred moonlight, who was at the 2nd tier of the divine level, and Lan Yu, who was at the 1st tier of the divine level. Although the blue sacred moonlight had been severely injured by Fang Xingjian previously, she had already recovered 50% to 60% of her powers during this period of time. However, she was still defeated by a single attack from her opponent. Thereafter, the Myriad Stars Palace's astral ancestor brought 300 disciples to provide reinforcements. However, they were unable to hold on for even 10 minutes. In the end, they could only rely on the full moon shrine's protective formation to defend passively. The Mage Association had only sent a single person to take action. This battle caused the many knights in the Xingwu region to see despair. The difference between knights and mages was like a wide chasm, causing them to completely lose their confidence in cultivating. Such a blow was almost fatal. In the sky, Fang Xingchen looked coldly at the full moon shrine under his feet. The horns on his head and the tail on his back had become even thicker and stronger than before. His height had also reached 2.5 meters, and his entire body was encompassed by layers of purple stratum corneum. His thick arms seemed to contain a violent power that was like that of a volcano. With each wave of his palms, plasma fireballs with a temperature of several 100,000 degrees Celsius gushed out, bringing along a power that could incinerate everything and smashing toward the full moon shrine. Right now, with the support of the red faction black magic, Fang Xingchen's appearance was getting closer and closer to that of the red evil god. As one of the mages who specialized in head-on battles amongst the 12 factions, the higher the cultivation of the red faction mages, the closer their physical structure would be to that of the red evil god. As the Black Mage King's disciple, Fang Xingchen was able to receive guidance from the Red Mage King directly. Coupled with the world's metamorphosis, the endless resources, and the black magic that the Gold Mage King personally performed, Fang Xingchen was able to grasp the power that he would have after cultivating for 3 years in advance. Although the price he had to pay was that he would not be able to increase his strength by relying on his own cultivation for the next 6 years, he had still managed to step into Tier 1 of the divine level. He had obtained the power that he would have after cultivating for 3 years in advance, but the price he had to pay was that he would not be able to obtain power from his own cultivation for 6 consecutive years. However, Fang Xingchen knew that even if he could not cultivate on his own, he was confident that there were too many shortcuts he could take in this era where the world's metamorphosis was happening. Moreover, if he did not do this, Fang Xingchen understood that he would probably never be able to catch up to Fang Xingjian. In order to seek revenge, what was the big deal about sacrificing a few years of cultivation and growth? Fang Xingchen sent another plasma fireball, smashing onto the light screen outside the full moon shrine like a plasma cannon. Looking at the light screen that kept on trembling, the corners of Fang Xingchen's lips curled up into a hint of a cold smile. It's about time. Prepare for battle. We'll be able to break through this mosquito barrier in at most 5 minutes. The two people behind him nodded. Other than a black-robed mage, there was also a man with fiery red skin and a small horn on his head. It was Fang Qian's younger brother, Fang Xingqian's apostle. After Fang Xinjian escaped, Li Shuanghua had chosen another genius from her clan to be Fang Xingqian's apostle. This evil black magic made use of the power of their bloodlines to merge the lives of two people together. Not only could Fang Xingqian borrow the apostle's powers, but he could also transfer his injuries onto the other party. Fang Xingqian looked at the full moon shrine, which was swaying under his feet, and the corners of his lips curled up into a hint of a cold smile. Is that Lan Yu your woman, Fang Xinjian? I'll let her know what true hell is like. Take it as me asking you for some interest in advance. Ever since Fang Xinjian knew that the Black Mage King was going to leave the Xingwu region, he had been eager to lead a team over. His goal was very simple, to take revenge on Fang Xinjian. Fang Xinjian's eyes burned with the flames of vengeance, and scorching white flames started burning in his palms. However, at the next moment, a will descended from the sky, exploding in the minds of the three of them. Shut up! Fang Xingqian was stunned for a moment before saying, Master? Let's go. We're retreating. Fang Xingqian was stunned. But I'm about to succeed, and everyone in the Xingwu region is watching. If we retreat this time around. Chapter 7:15. Hush! The Black Mage King's annoyed voice rang out in Fang Xingqian's mind. Fang Xinjian fought with Alexander in the Great Western region, but the victor was not decided. From today onward, you mustn't offend him. What? Fang Xingqian clenched his fists tightly, crushing the flames in his palm. However, he still found it hard to believe the Black Mage King's word. But I won't interfere if he tries to kill you. Before the evil god ritual, you mustn't complicate things for me. Hearing that the Black Mage King would not even step in to stop Fang Xinjian from killing him, Fang Xingqian's face flushed red. Although Fang Xingqian knew that the Black Mage King did not wish to get injured and welcome the ritual in a perfect state, his expression was still distorted, and he clenched his fists tightly. However, under the Black Mage King's continuous urging, he could only throw a hateful glance toward the full moon shrine on the ground and leave rapidly. Damn it! Fang Xinjian! How could he possibly fight to a draw with Alexander? Fang Xingqian's brows furrowed deeply. Doesn't that mean that he has the battle prowess of a Tier 5 divine level expert? Extreme fury and hatred flashed in his eyes. If this were to go on, wouldn't I never be able to take revenge in this lifetime? The battle prowess of a Tier 5 divine level expert was no small matter even for a knight. Even the Black Mage King was unwilling to take the initiative to offend Fang Xinjian. On the ground, countless knights looked in the direction of the sky in a daze. Just as the light screen of the full moon shrine became increasingly thinner, the three mages suddenly flew away, causing countless people to be astonished. What's going on? Why did they stop? The full moon shrine was clearly about to be breached, right? The Xingwu region's governor looked at the three figures who had disappeared in the sky in astonishment, unable to understand what was going on. Could it be that the full moon shrine still has some secret weapon? Then why didn't they perform it earlier? Just as everyone was feeling astonished, curious, and puzzled, a conferred knight charged over and let out a loud bellow. Violent sound waves radiated out from his mouth, shooting out in all directions and entering the ears of over 10,000 knights present. Fang Xinjian and Alexander the Great Emperor battled in the sky above the Great Western region. They exchanged a total of 7 moves and ended in a draw. Alexander the Great Emperor retreated. It was a simple sentence, but it seemed to contain some kind of strange magic. As the news reached everyone's ears, the entire place fell into a strange silence. Everyone listened to this news in a daze, and most of them still had disbelief in their eyes. Alexander, who had dominated the empire for decades and stood at the peak of all experts, was forced to retreat? Repelled by Fang Xinjian. The crowd fell silent, as if they had been silenced by a spell. Xingwu region's governor was dumbfounded, and his mind went blank. The old man from the battle hall fell silent. He stared at the disappearing figures of the three warlocks and finally understood why they had retreated. Is it because the Myriad Stars Palace and the Full Moon Shrine surrendered to Fang Xinjian? With just a name, he was able to resolve the Full Moon Shrine's predicament and scare off a divine-level mage. This prowess. Simultaneously, the eyes of his disciples also lit up. The people in the surroundings all reacted to why the mages had retreated. In the next moment, the silent crowd seemed to explode like burning gasoline, and countless people's voices rang out. Fang Xinjian. From today onward, the entire empire will be split between Fang Xinjian and Alexander. He hasn't even arrived, but just his name alone has scared off the mages. Such ferocious prowess. Such ferocious prowess. In the full moon shrine, the blue sacred moonlight looked toward the sky with an unresigned expression. She looked at the white flames burning on the other party's palm. It was that white flames that had defeated her. She seemed to feel the pain of having her will melted once again. Gritting her teeth, this Tier 2 divine-level madam who still retained her charm said in a deep voice, "Haven't you guys made up your minds? If this goes on, we'll definitely die. These damned mages are too powerful." Lan Yu shook her head. Right now, although Lan Yu's countenance was pale and she looked like a weak patient, her slender legs and pretty face still gave her an unrivaled attractiveness. She shook her head and said, "That won't do. If we surrender, there might not be a good outcome. Moreover, how are we going to explain this to Fang Xinjian? You still remember that guy?" The blue sacred moonlight gritted her teeth and said, "He humiliated the entire full moon shrine. Moreover, I heard that this guy has been blocked by the gold-robed mages in the northern ice region. Right now, he can't even fend for himself. How can he still care about us?" Lan Yu shook her head. Fang Xinjian's cultivation is deep and unfathomable. Even if he were to encounter mages, it probably wouldn't be hard for him to escape unscathed. If we surrender now, not only will we be exploited by the black-robed mages, but we'll also have to face Fang Xinjian's revenge in the future. I don't think that surrendering is a good idea either. The astral ancestor also shook his head. Fang Xinjian's potential is unfathomable. The Mage Association might not be able to do anything to him. In a while, when the full moon shrine is breached, we'll just scatter and escape. "Two idiots," the blue sacred moonlight said furiously. "Are you guys going to abandon the entire faction's businesses? Do you still not understand the Mage Association's power? How can that country bumpkin Fang Xinjian possibly be a match for them? The earlier we submit to the Mage Association, the more benefits we'll get in the future. Even if Fang Xinjian comes to find trouble with us, do you think that he'll be able to get past the mages? We have the protection of the Mage Association, so it's impossible for him to take revenge on us." However, no matter how much the blue sacred moonlight persuaded them, the two of them refused to agree. The blue sacred moonlight was so infuriated that she kept stomping her feet. In her opinion, the two of them had been scared out of their wits by Fang Xinjian. To think that Fang Xinjian and the Mage Association were still hesitating when faced with such an obvious choice. The blue sacred moonlight was so infuriated that her liver was in pain. The surrounding disciples were silent, and only the sorrow in their eyes could be seen. They did not have the right to participate in the discussion between the three divine-level experts, but they felt sorrowful that they could only choose to submit to. Just then, Lan Yu's gaze narrowed as she looked at the sky and she said, "They've left." "What?" The blue sacred moonlight and the myriad star ancestor both looked toward the sky. When they saw that Fang Xingchen and the other two had retreated, both of them revealed dazed and puzzled expressions. Why did they leave? Could it be a trap? Luring us out? What should we do? The three of them could not understand why the other party would retreat when the full moon shrine's great mountain protection formation was about to be broken in a few more minutes. At the next moment, streams of divine waves were transmitted into the ears of everyone present. The three divine-level experts even received them in advance with their martial wills. Fang Xinjian and Alexander the Heavenly Emperor fought in the sky above the Great Western region. They exchanged a total of 7 moves and ended in a draw. Alexander the Heavenly Emperor retreated. In the blink of an eye, the entire full moon shrine fell silent. Then countless cheers broke out. Lan Yu's expression was slightly stunned. At the next moment, she smiled excitedly. She knew that she had made the right bet. The astral ancestor stroked his beard and smiled. The blue sacred moonlight's countenance changed. In the end, she slowly closed her eyes, let out a long sigh, and said, "In terms of sword arts, there's probably no one who can be a match for this lad." Although she was stubborn, she was not stubborn. Wanting to submit to the Mage Association earlier was a form of accommodation. Now that she heard the news that Fang Xinjian had fought to a draw with Alexander, she started to work hard to suppress her hostility toward Fang Xinjian. She let out a soft sigh inwardly. After this battle, this lad's reputation will probably not lose out to that of Mage King level experts. The astral ancestor smiled and said, "Mr. Fang's name has shaken the world. Why don't we head to the Great Western region together to congratulate him?" The blue sacred moonlight's eyelids drooped as she said calmly, "The Empire's #1 sword deserves such treatment. Lan Yu, make a trip to the treasury." Chapter 7:16. In the Great Western Region Regional Academy, Fang Xinjian sat cross-legged in a secret room with the abyss longsword floating slowly in front of his chest. Mysterious and unfathomable gravitational waves were emitted from the sword, bringing along waves of profound and unfathomable information. Although he had successfully broken through the limits of the infiltrating void sword during the battle with Alexander and grasped a hint of the profoundness of gravity, the condensing of the sword intent on the abyss longsword was still not perfect. Right now, Fang Xinjian was still perfecting its prowess. Moreover, the forging of the abyss longsword itself had not been completed, so it was not in its peak condition. Right now, it could only rely on Fang Xinjian's unparalleled sword intent to temper it bit by bit, increasing its prowess. Simultaneously, Fang Xinjian's body did not appear to be in a good condition either. Streams of cracks were spreading out on his body. These were all the results of the battle with Alexander, causing his martial will to weaken by a lot. All of these required him to slowly condense and repair them, just like how he would glue a cracked gemstone back together. Simultaneously, Zhou Xingwen and the others stood before Fang Xinjian, reporting the current situation to Fang Xinjian. Rhoda, Fang Qian, Wang Xiaoyan, and the others looked at Fang Xinjian with great admiration. The governor, head of department, Philip, the fourth prince, Tyrant, and the others all wore gratified expressions, thinking that they had not chosen the wrong person. Fang Xinjian nodded. With a single thought, a gush of profound information gushed into everyone's minds. These are the contents of the 1st to 9th levels of the Mystical Prince. From today onward, all of you can start cultivating up to the 9th level of the Mystical Prince. The 9th level of the Mystical Prince can greatly increase your aptitude and rapidly raise your cultivation. Sensing the information regarding the Mystical Prince in their minds, both Philip and the fourth prince wore astonished expressions. The effects were too astonishing, and they found it hard to believe that there would be such a heaven-defying thing in the world. However, they finally understood why the people on Fang Xinjian's side were all geniuses, improving rapidly in the past few months. At the thought that they could also cultivate the 9th level of the Mystical Prince, they became extremely excited and filled with anticipation. As for the others, they were extremely agitated. It was already very amazing for them to be able to cultivate up to the 5th level of the Mystical Prince. Now that Fang Xinjian had given them the remaining information up to the 9th level of the mystical prince, how could they not be agitated? They knew too well how heaven-defying mystical prince were. However, Fang Xinjian did not have much of a reaction. To the current him, the 9th level of the mystical prince was no longer a threat. In fact, if there were sufficient materials, he would not mind giving everyone the cultivation method for the 10th level of the mystical prince. He said calmly, with the world's metamorphosis, the abilities of many divine-level experts are rising rapidly. Those below the divine level are still just ant. Now that you guys have the 9th level of the mystical prince, you must make good use of your time and become divine-level experts as soon as possible. Zhou Xingwen trembled as he clenched his fists tightly. A divine-level expert, what an unreachable name. He had never expected that he, Zhou Xingwen, would one day set a divine-level expert as his goal. Fang Xinjian then turned to look at Fang Qian and Wang Xiaoyan, saying, "Later on, the Holy Light Clan will send the Panwu heavenly raiment over. You guys can modify it into a sword as well." He then paused for a moment before continuing, "Fang Qian, if it's possible, try to modify the Panwu heavenly raiment closer to the strong or weak interaction forces." Fang Qian was slightly stunned and asked, "Why did you think of this?" "But, this is too difficult. I'm not a theoretical physicist." Fang Xinjian shook his head and did not answer Fang Qian's question. He merely said, "If it doesn't work out, then get people from Earth over. Anyway, try your best to get closer to these two directions." Ever since Fang Xinjian pushed Alexander back, he had been recuperating while practicing the Abyss longsword. At the same time, he was also thinking about his sword art. The universe relied on the 4 fundamental forces to maintain its own operation. Right now, he had grasped a hint of the profoundness of gravity and electromagnetic forces, but he could not help but think about the remaining strong and weak forces. Although there were differences between Miracle World and Earth, they both had the heavenly thunders and terrestrial magnetism forces that corresponded to electromagnetic forces, and the astral forces that corresponded to gravity. If he could find the balance between strong and weak forces and condense them into the celestial eradication sword formation, how powerful would the prowess of the sword formation be? Therefore, after giving Fang Qian instructions on the direction of her research, Fang Xinjian then looked at everyone's current situation. After settling all the trivial matters, Fang Xinjian finally let out a sigh and said calmly, "Then can you tell me now? Why didn't I scan Lilia? Where did she go?" Everyone instantly fell silent. Even though Fang Xinjian had not unleashed any of his powers and had only asked this question lightly, it still caused everyone present to feel waves of invisible pressure, as heavy as Mount Tai. This was the pressure brought about by the Empire's #1 sword. Simultaneously, in a manor in the north of the Great Western region, the entire manor had been built on a cliff. Surrounded by layers of clouds, it was like a paradise in the heavens, causing one to be dazzled. The manor's owners were seated in the meeting room, with a white-haired old man sitting in the main seat. He had a stocky build, just like a crouching tiger, exuding an astonishing aura. Seated below him were 3 men and 2 women, a total of 5 middle-aged men. All of them appeared elegant and dignified, and one could tell with just one look that they were either wealthy or of high status. However, unlike the others, who were taking their time, a young man stood in the center of the hall. He appeared to be flustered and exasperated, and his eyes were bloodshot as he said, "How can you guys do this? Where's Lilia? If Fang Xinjian were to find out, he'll wipe out our entire manor." The leader coughed and said in an imposing manner, "All right, third brother, how can you say such things? It's Lilia's good fortune that the masters took her away. Moreover, we weren't the ones who did it. Even if Fang Xinjian were to find out, would he be able to blame us? I'm Lilia's grandfather. Would I harm her?" "That's right." A middle-aged lady sharpened her nails with a nail clipper and said impatiently, If Fang Xinjian has what it takes, let him settle the scores with the masters himself. Why is he looking for trouble with us? Another middle-aged aristocrat said, how would he dare to look for trouble with the masters? He'll at most come and ask us questions. At that time, we'll just get the masters to come over and explain things. With Lilia being taken away by the masters, our family's relationship with them will be even closer. From now on, we'll have a meteoric rise. Speaking up to this point, everyone laughed as if they had thought of something delightful. The young man sighed and said in a sorrowful voice, you guys have no idea how serious the situation is. Right now, even if the masters were to come personally, they'd probably have to show some respect to Fang Xinjian. The middle-aged lady sharpened her nails as she smiled and said, third brother, what nonsense are you spouting? This joke isn't funny. Sigh. The young man shook his head and sighed. The latest news is that 1 day ago, Fang Xinjian and Alexander fought in the sky above the Great Western region. The two of them exchanged 7 moves consecutively, and Alexander took the initiative to retreat. Sigh, we weren't able to protect Lilia with our lives. We'd better think of how to make amends to Fang Xinjian. As the young man said this, everyone present was shocked. The nail clipper in the middle-aged lady's hand dropped onto the ground with a clatter, but she did not seem to feel it. The news from earlier continued to echo in her mind. Chapter 717. The Celestial Cloud Fortress was a great hidden faction in the north of the Great Western region. Ever since the Illumination Society and the Eternal Night Society were dealt a great blow by Fang Xinjian, the Celestial Cloud Fortress had become the strongest faction in the Great Western region. However, the Great Western region was Fang Xinjian's territory after all, and the Celestial Cloud Fortress had always upheld the idea of staying hidden in the world. Although the current master of the Celestial Cloud Fortress had the ambition to rule the world, he hid in the shadows obediently, not daring to make a move. However, what many people did not know was that the granddaughter of the Celestial Cloud Fortress's master, Lilia, was Fang Xinjian's disciple. Just as the people in the Celestial Cloud Fortress were having a meeting, in the forest on the other side of the Great Western region, white clothes fluttered, and a young lady covered in a white veil shot out toward the forest like an arrow that had left a bow. She took a step into an empty space in the forest, and as the air trembled, 12 sharp arrows shot out toward her. Sword light flashed in the young lady's hand, and her long sword swept across the sky, blocking off the 12 sharp arrows. Each of the 12 sharp arrows tore through the air like thunderbolt. Their prowess was comparable to the armor-piercing bullets shot out from modern sniper rifles. As a series of collisions rang out, the sharp arrows were either repelled or broken, dropping onto the ground. However, the young lady's arm also felt numb, and she felt as if she had lost all her strength. She frowned and looked toward the depths of the forest. 12 shadows flashed silently in the forest, and a man's arrogant voice with a hint of killing intent rang out, "Stinking bitch, you've been chasing us for 7 days and 7 nights. Now that the 12 of us have gathered together, wait for me to catch you. Ha ha, boss, let me be the first to do her. This woman is enough for us to play with for a few months. I'm going to impregnate her." The young lady frowned and said coldly, "You 12 mad beasts have committed all sorts of atrocities. Now that all 12 of you are here, we can go after her one by one. Do her. She'll know to be afraid later." As they spoke, the arrows shot out like thunder, accompanied by a series of booms. Many sharp arrows brought along white air currents as they shot out toward the young lady. In the beginning, the young lady could still fend them off. She even charged forward while dodging the sharp arrows, chasing after the 12 mad beasts. However, the 12 of them continued to fire, and each arrow was enough to tear a vacuum corridor in the forest. They were able to shoot through dozens of trees without slowing down. The surging rain of arrows was like a metal storm from modern weapons, and it was difficult to resist. Finally, an explosive sound came from the young girl's shoulder. Her flesh was torn apart, and even a section of her bone was exposed. This was an arrow that surpassed the speed of sound. Because of this one arrow, she suddenly fell to the ground. Another 3 arrows pierced through her feet, calves, and thighs, nailing her to the ground like a rabbit. Ha 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 ha, I shot her. Be careful, this woman is very wild. Hee hee hee, I'll let her know how powerful I am later. Lewd laughter came from the forest, but in the next moment, a loud rumble came from the ground. The ground split open, and trees shot up into the sky, as if a tornado had swept them up. What happened? Earthquake! Damn it! Who caught me? A series of panic-stricken voices rang out, and the young lady in white looked at this scene in a daze. At the next moment, her eyes were filled with astonishment. Within a range of 10 lis, all the grass, trees, bamboo, and rocks had flown into the air, and the entire area was turned into a barren land. To blow away everything within a range of 10 lis, leaving only the young lady in white lying on the ground. What kind of power was this? Under the young lady's astonished gaze, a black-robed young man walked out slowly. He casually draped a black muslin robe over his body, but it floated up and down like flames. One could barely see his chest and abdominal muscles, and it was as if he was not wearing anything. At the sight of the young man's appearance, how could the 12 mad beasts not know that they had encountered an expert? They immediately started begging for mercy. However, the young man merely threw them an indifferent glance, and his sharp gaze swept through the void space like sword light. You deserve to die. At the next moment, the 12 of them turned into 12 streams of blood that splattered across the sky. Fang Xinjian was only draped in black robes, and his feet were bare. When he got close, the young lady in white could even faintly see the slight cracks on the surface of his body. The young lady asked anxiously, "Who are you?" Fang Xinjian did not say a word. He merely raised his hand, and the young lady floated before him. The long arrows that had struck her body shattered, and her body recovered at a speed that could be seen by the naked eye. This was treatment, but it was also a threat. The young lady's countenance changed abruptly. Celestial Cloud Fortress Yuji, I'll only ask you once. Fang Xinjian looked calmly at the young lady in white and said, You'd better think carefully about how you're going to answer. What do you want to know? Where's the Celestial Cloud Fortress? Fang Xinjian asked coldly. Yuji's countenance changed. The reason why the Celestial Cloud Fortress had been able to remain as a hidden sect was because its location was kept a secret. Their disciples would also keep their identities hidden after they left the mountain. Hearing Fang Xinjian's question, Yuji's first reaction was to feign ignorance. However, when she saw the cold gleam in his eyes and sensed his world-shaking prowess, she fell silent for a moment before saying, The Cloud Mist Mountain in the north of the Great Western region. I can bring you there, but you, without waiting for Yuji to finish her words, Fang Xinjian had already grabbed hold of the young lady in white. At the next moment, the young lady in white only saw a myriad of colors before her eyes, and it was as if her entire body had experienced a magnitude 18 earthquake. Terrifying tremors started to transmit from Fang Xinjian's hands to every inch of her muscles and bones. When she once again returned to normal, it was as if her entire body had fallen apart. Her mind was in a daze, and she felt as if she was being pricked by needles. She vomited almost immediately after she stopped. When she lifted her head, her gaze was in a daze. Cloud Mist Mountain? She said in disbelief. How is that possible? We were over 1,000 lis away from the Cloud Mist Mountain earlier. However, Fang Xinjian did not answer her question and continued to ask, Where is it? Cold sweat broke out on Yuji's back. She knew that this time around, she had probably encountered an unbelievable divine-level expert. In the end, she could not help but ask, Who on earth are you? Why are you looking for the Celestial Cloud Fortress? Fang Xinjian did not reply. He merely flicked his fingernails, and the young lady seemed as if she had been struck by lightning. She dropped to her knees, pointed in the direction of the cloud mist mountain with trembling hands and said, "It's at the top of the cliff at the end." Another earthquake-like tremor ran through her entire body. However, it was much better than the previous time. When Fang Xijian came to a stop, Yuji struggled to lift her head and look up. On that cliff, the fortress amidst the sea of clouds had already appeared before her. She said, "I'll go make a report. It's our honor to have an expert like you come to our celestial cloud fortress." "There's no need. I'm used to fighting first." Fang Xinjian took a step forward, and sword cheese shot out from void space. The sea of clouds was torn apart, and there were no longer any clouds on the cloud mist mountain. With his second step, sword light swept across the cliff, and the entire cliff was sliced apart like a cake. With his third step, Fang Xinjian's body suddenly swelled up, turning into a 10,000-meter tall giant. He grabbed the celestial cloud fortress with a single palm. Chapter 7:18. Everyone in the celestial cloud fortress was dumbfounded. They either dropped to their knees or had their mouths agape as they looked at Fang Xinjian in the sky in a daze. It was as if they were looking at a legendary miracle. "Hand over Lilia within 1 minute, or you'll die." A thunderous voice rang out, bringing along strong gales that swept through the fortress. In an instant, countless items were sent flying, and many people were unable to open their eyes or stand steadily. The people who had been discussing Fang Xinjian in the main hall earlier immediately rushed out. When they saw the situation, their countenances changed drastically. The upper-class lady forced herself to shout, "Fang Xinjian, we weren't the ones who lost Lilia. Do you only know how to bully our celestial cloud fortress?" Fang Xinjian's cold gaze swept past the upper-class lady. Sword intense filled the air and struck the upper-class lady's consciousness. In that instant it was as if she had been doused with cold water, causing her to drop to her knees, unable to say another word. Another young man shouted, "Lord Sword Overlord, please listen to our explanation. Lilia had only accepted our invitation to come to the celestial cloud fortress to have fun. We have no ill intentions." However, when the purple-robed masters saw Lilia, they insisted on taking her in as their disciple and thus forcefully brought her away. Purple-robed mages. Fang Xijian frowned. He had not expected that this group of people would be the ones to take action. Moreover, they wanted to take Lilia away. Fang Xijian asked, "Where did they go? Why are you guys in contact with the purple-robed mages?" The young man quickly explained, "There was once a purple-robed mage in our clan. However, he didn't have much talent and came here to cultivate in seclusion. Some time ago, a purple-robed mage suddenly came and said that Lilia was fated with her. Thus she took her away. We don't know where that lady has gone, nor do we know how to contact her." "Fate, is it sudden inspiration?" Fang Xinjian silently put the fortress back and once again returned to his original appearance. His long black robes fluttered like a spirit snake under the strong winds, covering half of his body. He'd already used his sword intent and sudden inspiration to sense Lilia's location, but he hadn't been able to find her. He could only follow Zhou Xingwen and the others' information and find Yuji first before finding this place, the place where Lilia had last disappeared. At the next moment, with a single thought from Fang Xinjian, sword intense streaked across the air and darted into the bodies of everyone from the celestial cloud fortress. "I'll believe your words for now. Leave behind a strand of sword intent. Once I find out that you're hiding anything, I'll definitely exterminate your entire clan." After saying this, Fang Xinjian's figure flashed and completely disappeared. The people from the celestial cloud castle were left behind, looking as if they had just lost their parent. Fang Xinjian, on the other hand, had already broken through the atmosphere. His entire body was bathed in the golden sunlight. Even the sudden inspiration can't sense Lilia's location. Is it because the sudden inspiration of the 10th level of the mystical prince isn't something that one can cultivate and can only sense passively? Fang Xinjian's eyes narrowed. Then I'll strive for Tier 4 of the divine level and truly grasp the sudden inspiration ability. I'll then find Lilia and have enough power to suppress the Empire. However, according to the records, to strive for the next tier of the 9-tiered heavens and comprehend the sudden inspiration ability, I'll need to head to an illusory realm and comprehend the profoundness of the past and future. But based on my previous experience, it's probably a parallel world again. It'll probably take another half a month or even more than 1 month. Before I head there, I'll have to get rid of all threats in case something like this happens again. At the thought of this, Fang Xinjian let go of his mind and will, focusing all his attention on sensing with his sudden inspiration. In an underground tomb at the extreme north of the central region, the first prince suddenly opened his eyes, revealing a hint of elation. Who would have thought that I'd discovered Saint Adam's tomb? 10 years ago, the first prince had unintentionally gone on an adventure and discovered Saint Adam's tomb. As the founder of the ancient path of hell, he had left behind countless cultivation essences for the ancient path of hell, allowing the first prince to improve by leaps and bounds. However, when he finally opened the coffin, he did not discover Saint Adam's remains. He only saw 3 drops of blood, 3 drops of Saint Adam's blood. However, the first prince did not dare to consume them. Saint Adam was the founder of the ancient path of hell, and was said to be a top-notch character at Tier 8 of the divine level. How could the first prince dare to consume the blood he had left behind? The first prince was afraid that if he were to consume it, he would be engulfed by Saint Adam's remnant consciousness and become a living Adam. Despite this, the first prince had improved by leaps and bounds over the past 10 years by relying on the cultivation notes that Adam had left behind, becoming extremely powerful. However, the more he cultivated, the stronger he became. The more he understood how powerful Adam was, the more he did not dare to consume Adam's blood. Finally, during the battle at the Hades vault, under Fang Xinjian's all-out pressure, the first prince came up with a solution. He split his martial will into 2, hiding one part while erasing the other part of his memories and heading to the full moon shrine for battle. If he were to win, he would be able to make use of the full moon shrine to eliminate Fang Xinjian. If he were to lose, he would be able to make use of this opportunity to be reborn and temper his will. Therefore, after the first prince started cultivating, it was true that he did not remember the backup plan that he had left behind. Then, through this method that was similar to faking his death, he was able to reconstruct himself from the ashes. As a result, his mental will was tempered at an unbelievable level. In the end, with Shang's help, not only did he find back the other half of his martial will that he had split off, but he also integrated another drop of Adam's blood. His martial will's attribute broke through 2,000 points. In the ancient tomb, the first prince looked at the remaining 2 drops of blood, and his eyes were filled with excitement. Could it be that true Lord Qingshan really thinks that I only have 1 drop of Adam's blood? Or could it be that he and father are restraining each other and are unwilling to care about me? The first prince shook his head. It doesn't matter anymore. As long as I take these 2 drops of Adam's blood, my martial will probably be able to break through 5,000 points or more. By then, I'll be able to strive for Tier 2 or even Tier 3 of the divine level in a single stroke. At the thought of this, the first prince's face was filled with agitation. He thought of how he had achieved great mastery in his martial arts, broken out of seclusion, killed Fang Xinjian, and even defeated his father and suppressed true Lord Qingshan. However, at the next moment, a palm suddenly appeared in void space, grabbing the 2 drops of Adam's blood. No! The first prince let out an enraged bellow and pressed out fiercely with an overturned hell. The violent power shattered the entire ancient tomb into dust, but it was unable to do anything to that palm. Amidst the earth-shattering impact, dust soared up into the sky, and two figures dashed up into the sky. Looking at the black-robed Fang Xinjian who was standing barefooted, the first prince gritted his teeth so hard that they almost shattered. He said each word clearly, Fang Xinjian. However, Fang Xinjian threw him an indifferent glance and said, "So that's how it is. It's really a little dangerous." Chapter 719. You. The first prince's eyes were bloodshot as if he had seen an irreconcilable enemy. However, Fang Xinjian shook his finger and said, "You have a good father, so I won't kill you. However, your father and I are fine for now. We're just worried that you brats will be difficult to deal with and will stir up some trouble." With that, 4 streams of sword light flashed and the celestial eradication sword formation was activated. The infiltrating void sword intense transmitted through space and pierced into the first prince's consciousness. Roar! The first prince erupted explosively, and a martial will of 2,000 points burst out. It was as if several tens of nuclear missiles had exploded, and violent powers seethed in his consciousness. However, they were unable to fend off Fang Xinjian's sword intense in the slightest. The first prince could only watch as his martial will turned into dust and dissipated once again. "Don't you like to recultivate? Then recultivate for another 3 years." With a thud, the first prince fell from the sky. His powers had once again been crippled by Fang Xinjian. This time around, he had truly fallen from the clouds into a swamp. The first prince clenched his fists tightly and bellowed as he looked at the disappearing figure in the sky. "Fang Xinjian, the two of us are absolutely irreconcilable." However, Fang Xinjian no longer cared about the first prince. With a flash, he appeared 10,000 lis away. Excellent. Alexander didn't make a move. It seems that his injuries from the previous battle have yet to recover. Since that's the case, he wishes to participate in the evil god ritual in perfect condition. As long as I don't cross his bottom line, he won't make another move. Fang Xinjian's eyes narrowed as he looked at Adam's blood in his hand. With a casual sweep of his martial will, Fang Xinjian could sense the tremendous energy contained in this drop of blood. It was a power that was like the mountains and seas. Even a single drop of blood had surpassed the power of Fang Xinjian's martial will. Fang Xinjian's martial will was only over 1,500 points. If it was not because of the celestial eradication sword formation, he would really have to put in a lot of effort in order to take down the first prince. However, Fang Xinjian did not plan on consuming Adam's blood. Even if he did, his martial will's pure power value would still not surpass that of the celestial eradication sword formation. It would not be of much help to the growth of his battle prowess, so he might as well give it to the people from Atlantis. These brats are indeed capable of stirring up trouble. Next then, withdrawing Adam's blood, Fang Xinjian closed his eyes and once again felt that strange feeling in his heart. In the eastern sand region, the world annihilation heavenly lord sat cross-legged on a huge stone tower. Streams of gray light descended from the sky and entered his body. As the leader of the Serene Shrine and the gray-robed mages, the world annihilation heavenly lord had been killed by the joint forces of Fang Xinjian and the first prince during the battle in the Hades vault. He was only left with a small portion of his remnant will, and it had not been easy for him to recover. At this moment, the body he was using was that of a thin and weak young man. He was wholeheartedly praying to the evil god. He was carrying out an unprecedented sacrifice. Under the stone tower there were over 10,000 humans lying on the ground. Their blood flowed like rivers and chilly winds blew. They were all experts and commoners from various places whom the Serene Shrine had captured during this period of time. They had gathered almost all of the corpses that could be found in the various battlefields and mountainous regions. These corpses lay on the ground, and occasionally, a large number of them would disappear. It was as if there was a huge invisible beast engulfing them. Moreover, these corpses still had expressions of terror and anxiety on their faces. It was clear that they had suffered great torment before their death. This could be said to be an unprecedented sacrifice, and it was also the greatest sacrifice that the world annihilation Heavenly Lord had ever carried out. As the corpses gradually disappeared, the world annihilation Heavenly Lord's countenance became increasingly grim. It was only when the corpses completely disappeared that the world annihilation Heavenly Lord's eyes suddenly opened, and grey light burned fiercely. It was as if an eye had opened up in the sky, and a light pillar descended from the sky, landing before the world annihilation Heavenly Lord. Within the light pillar, a lump of pink flesh and blood was squirming slowly. The world annihilation Heavenly Lord frowned and thought, "This is the life form from an alternate world that was summoned after the sacrifice? But why don't I feel that it's powerful at all? It's not even as powerful as the Torch Dragon's offspring or the Crimson Corpse King." Grey faction black magic excelled in summoning the power of life forms from alternate worlds. The multivariate universe was far too vast, and there were countless powerful life forms. This allowed the grey-robed mages to get stronger at a rapid rate each time they summoned a new life form. However, at the next moment, a stream of information gushed into his brain, telling him what this thing was. Boo's flesh and blood? The world annihilation Heavenly Lord's eyes narrowed. This is a life form from another universe that can single-handedly destroy the entire universe. If it were to fully mature, its strength would surpass that of the divine level? The information regarding the world annihilation Heavenly Lord was very detailed. Boo's life form was man-made, but it possessed astonishing powers. Its powers allowed it to destroy the entire miracle world with a single thought. Upon receiving this information, the world annihilation Heavenly Lord was naturally overjoyed. However, at the next moment, after knowing the requirements to nurture this lump of flesh and blood, he wore a bitter expression. The amount of energy required to nurture this lump of Boo's flesh and blood would be an astronomical figure. However, there's no need to nurture it either. I'll just integrate this lump of flesh and blood into my body. This will also greatly increase the potential of this body of mine. By then, with each improvement in my cultivation, I'll be able to stimulate a portion of the prowess of Boo's flesh and blood. The corners of the world annihilation Heavenly Lord's lips curled up into a hint of a smile. As long as he had this lump of Boo's flesh and blood, not only would he be able to recover his powers completely, but he would also be able to far surpass them. He would even have the confidence to go up against the Mage Association and the Holy See of Truth. However, at the next moment, Sword Cheese shot out from void space, tearing this body of his into dust. "How dare you!" The Grey Martial Will pounced toward Boo's flesh and blood, but it was wiped out by Fang Xinjian with a single sword attack. Watching as Fang Xinjian kept Boo's flesh and blood in his hand, the world annihilation Heavenly Lord bellowed furiously, "Fang Xinjian! You called me?" Fang Xinjian put away the flesh and blood, turned around, and slashed down with his sword again, completely shattering the Grey Martial Will. Shaking his head, Fang Xinjian said calmly, "Compared to the gold-robed faction, the grey-robed faction is far too inferior." The 10 great elders of the Serene Shrine had already rushed over when this happened. However, things had happened too quickly. In the blink of an eye, the world annihilation Heavenly Lord had been killed once again. Although he still had a backup of his physical body and will, he had suffered a great deal of damage from these 2 attacks. They did not know how the world annihilation Heavenly Lord would recover after being killed once again. Throwing a glance toward the 10 great elders, Fang Xinjian shook his head and then threw a glance toward the 3rd prince. Seeing that this prince, who had joined the Serene Shrine, cultivated black magic, and had even assimilated the flesh and blood of divine beasts, had also reached 5 tiers of perfection, Fang Xinjian shook his head once again, like a teacher criticizing a student. Too weak. As if no longer interested in making a move, the 3rd prince's silhouette disappeared with a flash. His words of too weak were like a sharp sword piercing into the hearts of everyone present. This was especially so for the third prince, who clenched his fists tightly and his body kept on trembling. He was extremely infuriated, yet there was nothing he could do. Throughout the entire process, Fang Xingjian seemed to have entered an uninhabited place. Chapter 720. At the borders of the Sand Country in the eastern Sand region. In a karst cave that was over 500 meters above the ground, a weak light kept on flashing in the darkness. That weak light was the fifth prince's martial will. After being seriously injured by Fang Xingjian, his current powers were not even comparable to that of an ordinary knight. Moreover, his physical body had been destroyed, and his will kept on dissipating and weakening. However, in this underground karst cave, streams of gray light emitted waves of resentment, hatred, and agonizing cries as they surged toward the fifth prince. They ceaselessly healed the fifth prince's injuries and even increased his powers bit by bit. 7 days and 7 nights passed by, and in the blink of an eye, he had once again stepped into the level of a conferred knight. Then he continued to recover his powers and reach the demigod level, continuing to strive toward becoming a divine-level expert. After all, with the fifth prince's realm, as long as the power of his martial will continued to recover, he would naturally be able to grasp the power of a divine-level expert once again. On the other side of the karst cave, a mysterious lady dressed in palace attire was wearing a veil. She was the fifth prince's mother, Lady Valia. Next to her was a man dressed in white robes and had a crown on his head. His aura was mysterious and distant, just like that of an ancient god. In particular, the man's skin gave off an extremely dry and desolate feeling, just like the desert above his head. This person was the current ruler of the Sand Country, the Sacred Fire Order's patriarch. The Sand Country was founded on religion, and the person in power was the Sacred Fire Order's patriarch. The emperor could change every year, but there would always only be one patriarch. This Sacred Fire Order's patriarch ruled over millions of people and countless countries in the desert. In terms of resources, he even surpassed Alexander a little. He also had the legacy of the Sand Country's founder, the heavenly monarch of the Blood Sea. His cultivation was deep and unfathomable, and he had not made a move for over 30 years. No one knew how powerful this Sacred Fire Order's patriarch was. It was because he was in existence like a god in the entire desert. No one dared to make a move against him, and there was no need for him to make a move against anyone either. The Sacred Fire Order's patriarch said calmly, "This is the relic of a 1,000-year-old ancient battlefield. Over the past 1,000 years, countless experts' martial wills have turned into remnant information and remained here. It's true that the rate of improvement is very fast with the power of these 1,000-year-old dead souls. However, aren't you guys afraid that he'll turn into a lunatic? If he can't even pass this small test, then he won't be fit to be my son," Lady Valia said coldly. "I won't fail." Just as the two of them were talking, another female voice rang out from behind them. Amidst the green light, chaos which Lamia walked out. The Sacred Fire Order's patriarch narrowed his eyes. Chaos which... This time around, it was also because of the chaos which that the princess and the Sacred Fire Order's patriarch had joined forces to help the fifth prince recover his powers. Chaos which, from what I know, the fifth prince's fortuitous encounter has always been related to you. Why? Is he the person you've chosen? The Sacred Fire Order's patriarch asked calmly. The chaos which Lamia smiled. Her smile revealed endless mysteries. Her figure was like smoke, like an illusion, passing through the walls of the cave. She even passed through the bodies of the princess and the pope without the slightest obstruction. At the sight of this scene, the princess and the Sacred Fire Order's patriarch became even more solemn. Even though they could only see and hear the chaos which, their martial wills were unable to detect her existence. Hearing the Sacred Fire Order's patriarch's question, a bell-like laughter rang out from the Chaos Witch's mouth. He won't sink into a quagmire just like that. Instead, he will rise up again. He might even rise up again after suffering a setback, obtaining even greater achievements than before. This is fate, this is the future. It can't be defied, nor can it be changed. Hearing the mysterious murmurs coming from the Chaos Witch's mouth, the Sacred Fire Order's patriarch did not say anything. Lady Lamia, who was at the side, said coldly, "That's what you said earlier as well. However, now that he's been crippled by Feng Xinjian, and even Alexander is unable to do anything to Feng Xinjian, what should we do?" "It's true that some variables have appeared on Feng Xinjian," the Chaos Witch said slowly, "but under the guidance of fate, it's meaningless. In fact, if it wasn't for the evil god ritual, those mage kings or Alexander would still be able to suppress Feng Xinjian if they were willing to risk getting injured. Then are we just going to let him continue to grow?" There was anger in Princess Lamia's words. "You've seen how fast he is growing. If we let him go, I'm afraid we won't be able to subdue him in the future. By then, it will be too late." Hearing the conversation between Lamia and the Chaos Witch, the Sacred Fire Order's patriarch did not think much of it. As the ruler of the entire Sand Country, he had long since reached Tier 5 of the divine level. Having been unrivaled in the Sand Country for several decades, he had developed an extremely arrogant and proud personality. In his opinion, there were probably only one or two people who were stronger than him in the entire world. Regarding how Alexander and his entire empire had been turned upside down by a young lad who was not even 20 years old, the patriarch looked on with the attitude of watching a joke. As for the many pieces of information stating that Feng Xinjian's sword arts were brilliant and that he was very strong, the patriarch did not take them to heart. As the ruler of the entire Sand Country, he had been unrivaled for far too long. In his opinion, it was just that the mage kings and Alexander were wary of each other and keeping each other in check. This was why Feng Xinjian had the opportunity to take advantage of. Compared to Alexander and the few mage kings, the patriarch felt that he was not inferior to Feng Xinjian. He should even be a little stronger than Feng Xinjian. Lady Lamia saw through the patriarch's thoughts and said calmly, "Your Holiness, you mustn't underestimate Feng Xinjian. This person has the world's top sword arts talent, and his future carries the fate of 2 worlds. Moreover, his relationship with the Sand Country isn't that good, right?" The Sacred Fire Order's patriarch smiled, not thinking much of it. "If Feng Xinjian dares to come to our Sand Country, I won't be as polite as Alexander." The Lady Lamia frowned, secretly feeling displeased with the patriarch's arrogance. It was a pity that the 5th prince still needed to rely on the patriarch to recover and strengthen himself. Therefore, she could only keep this in mind. The Chaos Witch said, "After the 5th prince succeeds, I hope that he can hold it in for now. Once the 1st prince, Shang, and the Abyss Lord are done with their preparations, he can then take the initiative to take action and suppress Feng Xinjian." As she spoke, she thought, Feng Xinjian will probably still be hard to suppress. However, if these people join forces, they'll be able to weaken him greatly. Otherwise, if Feng Xinjian is too powerful, it won't be beneficial for him to activate the Ring of Time. Just then, it was as if a myriad of ghosts were wailing and chilly gales were blowing violently. The entire underground karst cave was filled up by countless wailing souls. The 5th prince seemed as if he had just stepped out from the gates of hell, and a dark green light flashed in his eyes. "Don't worry." With each sentence he said, it was as if a myriad of people were shouting, "From today onward, I'll definitely not underestimate Feng Xinjian in the slightest. I won't take action unless I'm completely confident. Big Brother, Shang, and Uncle Abyss Lord. Unless they're all done with their preparations, I'll only join forces with them to kill Feng Xinjian." However, just then, the countenance of the Sacred Fire Order's patriarch suddenly changed. Sensing with his sudden inspiration, he turned into a stream of fiery light and charged out toward the fifth prince. Chapter 721. In the sky, the thunder calamity in Fang Xinjian's hand slashed down fiercely. It was as if the heavens were enraged, sending down thunderbolts that swept through the world. An extremely sharp, all-conquering sword intent tore through the atmosphere and slashed onto the desert in the blink of an eye. In that instant, the desert was split into two, and a great canyon that was over 10 kilometers long was instantly created. It was slashed apart like butter by the sharp, all-conquering sword intent. The canyon split open to a depth of over 500 meters, revealing the fifth prince and the others who were in the karst cave. Simultaneously, the all-conquering sword intent did not stop and continued slashing down toward the fifth prince. With this sword attack, the earth tore apart and the earth's crust exploded, slashing right before the fifth prince. Until now, neither the fifth prince nor Lady Valia could react at all. However, there was one person present who had the sudden inspiration's sense of danger. Almost at the moment Fang Xinjian appeared, he had already reacted, turning into a stream of fiery light and dashing out before the fifth prince. It was the Sand Country's ruler, a Tier 5 divine level expert, and the Sacred Fire Order's patriarch. From Tier 3 divine level experts onward, their physical body and will would condense into one, becoming a special conjured physique that could transform into a myriad of illusions and was close to being undying and indestructible. As a Tier 5 divine level expert, the Sacred Fire Order's patriarch was naturally even more powerful. His body turned into pure flames and instantly clashed with the all-conquering sword intent that came plunging down from the sky. This flame was the conjured physique that the Sacred Fire Order's patriarch had condensed, the undying flames. In that instant, the flames were scattered by a single attack. However, in the blink of an eye, they started burning up in void space once again. They were slashed apart, reignited, and then reignited. This happened 7 times in a row, completely blocking off the all-conquering sword intent that Fang Xinjian had sent smashing down. The Sacred Fire Order's patriarch looked at Fang Xinjian in the sky in astonishment. What a powerful sword intent! Who are you? Do you know who I am? How dare you make a move against me in the Sand Country? It's Fang Xinjian. Feeling as if he had taken another trip to the gates of hell, the fifth prince lifted his head and looked at Fang Xinjian in exasperation, saying, "Fang Xinjian, are you crazy? Do you really want to fight to the death with my Krieg tribe?" Princess Valia frowned. She raised her hand and hundreds of flowers bloomed. Layers of flowers seemed to be born from the void and blocked in front of her. She said coldly, "Fang Xinjian, you attacked a prince and offended the royal family. Do you really want to rebel? Is that how Second Bro taught you?" This Queen of Valia was dressed in palace attire and had a veil on her head. She exuded a mysterious aura. Although Fang Xinjian could sense that she was only a demigod with 3 tiers of perfection, he could sense an extremely dangerous aura from her. Clearly, she had either concealed her cultivation or possessed some kind of powerful divine weapon. With a single sword attack, the 3 great experts were all revealed. One of them was the fifth prince, who had absorbed the souls of the dead from the 1,000-year battlefield and regained his Tier 1 divine-level powers. The other one was Princess Valia, who appeared to be at the demigod realm but was hiding her strength and exuded a dangerous aura. Of course, the most dangerous one was still the Sacred Fire Order's patriarch, who had turned into inextinguishable flames and was at Tier 5 of the divine level. Hearing the fifth prince's and Princess Valia's words, which were close to giving in, the Sacred Fire Order's patriarch smiled and looked toward the sky. "You're Fang Xinjian? To think that you would dare to make a move in our Sand Country's territory. You're really as audacious as the rumors say. Since you've come, then don't leave. Stay behind." As the patriarch spoke, the world shone brightly, and countless flame lotuses rose up in void space. They were like countless white feathers, flying toward where Fang Xinjian was. Each flame lotus had the power to burn a small town into ashes. In the blink of an eye, they swept past in an overwhelming manner, bringing up layers and layers of stacking ripples in the sky. The power they contained was so powerful that it seemed as if even space could be scorched. This was not just an attack based on flames. A myriad of flame lotuses had also formed a chaotic space, making it impossible for one to escape. Amidst the flames, the will of the Sacred Fire Order's patriarch laughed. Fang Xinjian, I'm the ruler of the Sand Country and the Sacred Fire Order's patriarch. This is the world-cleansing lotus flower that has been secretly passed down in our sect. It's integrated with the Tier 5 divine level ability to stretch and contract space. You won't be able to break through it. At the sight of this terrifying attack, Lady Valia gasped inwardly. This Sacred Fire Order's patriarch is really a grandmaster of his generation. This means of merging fire and space is no longer inferior to Alexander's infernal hell. However, faced with the overwhelming attacks, Fang Xinjian did not dodge at all. With a toss of his hand, the Thunder Calamity longsword darted into void space. Then, with a grabbing motion, the Abyss longsword appeared in his hand. With a slash, the infiltrating void sword intense transmitted out through space. Almost at the instant Fang Xinjian slashed out, a large area of sparks burst out from the Sacred Fire Order's patriarch's body. What? The Sacred Fire Order's patriarch was taken aback. He had clearly set up layers of spatial defenses, so how had the other party managed to slash at him? Fang Xinjian said coldly, "Scram. Otherwise, I'll wipe out your entire Sacred Fire Order." The Sacred Fire Order's patriarch let out a cold laugh. Arrogant! At the next moment, with a single thought, the myriad of flame lotuses suddenly increased in speed, shooting out toward Fang Xinjian like meteors. However, countless all-conquering swords burst out from void space, clashing against the lotus flowers. They were either melted by the lotus flowers or slashed into pieces. The Thunder Calamity longsword moved about in void space, exuding streams of all-conquering sword intense and forcibly fending off most of the Sacred Fire Order's patriarch's attacks. However, the Sacred Fire Order's patriarch was a Tier 5 divine level expert after all. There were still streams of white flame lotuses that collided against Fang Xinjian's body. They were like popular flames, unleashing a tremendous prowess and burning Fang Xinjian's heaven-connecting sword physique like a man on fire. Seeing this, the Sacred Fire Order's patriarch laughed out loud and waved his hand. Another myriad of lotus flowers soared into the sky. Fang Xinjian, my world-cleansing lotus flowers use martial will as nourishment. Once it entangles you, it'll be able to burn endlessly. You won't be able to wipe it out. However, when Fang Xinjian sensed streams of pure white flames burning on his body, he continued to ignore them. He slashed out with the Abyss longsword again, passing through the densely packed world-cleansing lotus flowers and unleashing 1,000 layers of sword light explosively on the Sacred Fire Order's patriarch's body. The Sacred Fire Order's patriarch let out a stifled snort, and the flames that he had turned into dissipated and regenerated continuously. Throughout the entire process, he kept on dodging and retreating, even setting up layers of chaotic space. The world-cleansing lotus flowers defended, but it was useless. Right now, Fang Xinjian's infiltrating void sword seemed to be able to come and go without a trace. It would only explode at the moment it hit its target, and at all other times it would be attached to space. Regardless of whether it was his martial will or the chaotic space, it was hard to defend against it in the slightest. Fang Xinjian slashed out 21 times consecutively, causing sparks to splatter everywhere. No matter how hard he tried, he was unable to break free and could only scurry away like a rat. There was no way he could fend off the attacks and could only endure them head-on. Simultaneously, the Thunder Calamity longsword in void space shot out in reverse, piercing through Fang Xinjian's body. Relying on its unrivaled slicing prowess, it sliced through streams of his conjured physique. It was as if it was slicing through the skin of an apple, peeling off the burning world-cleansing lotus flowers. Chapter 722. At the sight of this scene, the corners of Lady Valia's eyes twitched fiercely. The fifth prince's heart also palpitated at the sight of this. Such sword arts were far too terrifying. However, although the Sacred Fire Order's patriarch kept on being slashed to the point of exploding, his conjured physique, the inextinguishable flames. The specialty of his conjured physique was that his defense was low. However, he could make use of the Sacred Fire Order's 1,000-year faith to revive almost endlessly. Therefore, even after being slashed over 10 times, he was still alive and kicking. At the next moment, the world within a range of 100 lis suddenly changed. Regardless of whether it was the land, the desert, the karst cave, or the sky, clouds, or atmosphere, all of them had turned into omnipresent flames. Even the Sacred Fire Order's patriarch himself had turned into a lump of flames and merged into them. He was like a drop of water that had merged into the ocean, making it hard for others to discover his tracks. A myriad of fire waves seethed as if they had their own will. Fang Xinjian, this is my great radiant world. I've gathered 49 types of sacred flames in the world and integrated them with my Sacred Fire Order's 9-tiered divine fire, becoming one with the divine. It has the potential to create and destroy the world. Will you be able to fend it off? Oh, is that so? As the patriarch spoke, the 4 longswords of the celestial eradication sword formation appeared. They were connected from head to tail, turning into a sword ring that appeared before Fang Xinjian. With a series of spins, it turned into a black hole, and with a dash, Fang Xinjian darted into the black hole. In the underground karst cave, Lady Valia let out a breath and said with lingering fear, "What terrifying sword arts! What a terrifying person! Not only does this person have unrivaled sword arts, but his faith has also completely integrated into his sword intent. He has become one with the sword and has an indestructible disposition. I wonder if the Sacred Fire Order's patriarch will be able to take him down." It was only at this moment that Lady Valia understood what it meant by hearing one's reputation was not as good as meeting one's face to face. Fang Xinjian and his sword were far more terrifying than what the rumors said. The fifth prince also felt a little fearful. His sword arts seemed to be a little more profound than when he fought against father the other time. He was not mistaken. Fang Xinjian had just comprehended some of the profoundness behind gravity the previous time around, and his infiltrating void sword had only just struck onto the abyss longsword. He had yet to reach perfection. Right now, after Fang Xinjian's cultivation, not only had the infiltrating void sword reached a new level, but he had also fused it with the abyss longsword, achieving perfection. His sword arts had reached a new level. Lamia, the Chaos Witch, suddenly said, "Let's go." What? Wang Fei was puzzled. Could it be that he can break through the Sacred Fire Order's patriarch's great radiant world? However, at the next moment, a black hole suddenly appeared with a flash. Sword light burst out from within, turning into an all-conquering sword intent that slashed out toward the fifth prince. The Chaos Witch's expression changed, and she blocked the longsword. At the next moment, with a flash of white light, both she and Fang Xinjian appeared in a pure green space. Fang Xinjian looked at the sudden change, and was stunned for a moment. He was about to wave his hand and perform the celestial eradication sword formation, but there was no reaction? The Chaos Witch chuckled and said, "Stop trying. Fang Xinjian, it's useless. You won't be able to use any of your powers here." Fang Xinjian looked at the Chaos Witch before him. This was the first time he had met her. It was because the chaos which had been cursed to be unable to come into contact with her ever since she was born. As long as she was unwilling, no one would be able to come into contact with her or discover her existence. Who are you? The chaos which said calmly, chaos which Lamia, the guide of fate, the protector of history. Fang Xinjian, do you know that your actions have already destroyed the balance of the entire world? Your actions will cause the entire universe to collapse. You have no idea how great of a mistake you've made. Fang Xinjian could not be bothered with the chaos which. He took a step forward and tapped out with a finger, wanting to kill her with his unparalleled sword arts. However, his body suddenly became light. Like a stream of green smoke, he had already passed her body. It's useless. The chaos which shook her head. This is my divine country. You have no ability to resist here. As long as I'm willing, I'll be able to kill you with a single thought. However, as long as you're willing to change your behavior, I can forgive you. As she spoke, her tone was filled with benevolence and love. It was as if she was a loving mother advising her rebellious son. Her tone was filled with sincerity. Fang Xinjian said coldly, "Change? How do you want me to change?" The chaos which said sincerely, "Stop going against the Krieg royal family, participate in the evil god ritual, and help them. This is the only way to save the world. Otherwise, when the seventh onslaught descends, no one will be able to survive." However, Fang Xinjian had already reacted. He looked at the green space and said, "You can't kill me, right? If you can, why are you still trying to persuade me?" The Chaos Witch's eyes narrowed. However, Fang Xinjian retorted, "Make your move. If you want to persuade me, you'll have to defeat me first." The Chaos Witch let out an enraged bellow, and in that instant, the winds and clouds in the entire green space changed. It was as if the two of them had instantly traversed countless universes and endless space-time. All sorts of black holes, white holes, fixed stars, quantum particles, and countless other spaces intersected with each other, going through all sorts of colorful changes. It was as if the two of them had traversed endless space-time and arrived at the ends of the universe. Fang Xinjian, cherish the chance I'm giving you. You don't understand how great the difference between the two of us is. If I'm willing, I'll be able to crush you to death with a single thought. Frenzied whistling sounds kept on ringing out next to Fang Xinjian's ears. That power was so real that even Fang Xinjian could not sense any flaws. He looked at this astonishing scene before him, but his expression did not change at all. "You can kill me, but don't think of changing my will. If you can kill me, then go ahead and do it." "Idiot!" The Chaos Witch bellowed furiously, "Then you can go and die." At the next moment it was as if the universe had exploded. Planets, fixed stars, black holes, and even the entire Milky Way collapsed, as if wanting to destroy the entire world. However, Fang Xinjian simply looked at this scene coldly until everything dissipated, and he once again returned to the real world. The Chaos Witch's face contorted. She could only watch as Fang Xinjian continued with his earlier sword attack, shaving off 99% of the fifth prince's powers. "Idiot, B*****, boorish brute. This fool who only knows how to fight." The fury in the Chaos Witch's eyes soared. Of course, what she had performed earlier was not the divine country. Instead, it was a move called the thought space. It could bring both of their consciousnesses into a subspace, and to the outside world, it was as if time had stopped. Although they would not be able to unleash any battle abilities in there, they could simulate all sorts of phenomena in the universe. However, Fang Xinjian remained unmoved from the beginning to the end. The Chaos Witch could sense that he was not really certain that she had guessed the truth behind the thought space. Instead, he was very straightforward and would not regret it even if he had to die. This was also the type of person that the Chaos Witch detested the most. They were like stone people, and almost all threats, temptations, and guidance were useless against them. Under everyone's astonished gazes, Fang Xinjian once again crippled the fifth prince with a single sword attack. It was only then that the Sacred Fire Order's patriarch darted out from the divine fire once again, looking at Fang Xinjian with a gaze filled with wariness. The short exchange made him realize that although it was hard for Fang Xinjian to defeat him, he was also unable to do anything to Fang Xinjian. This made the Sacred Fire Order's patriarch very wary. Fang Xinjian turned to look at the Sacred Fire Order's patriarch. "Do you still want to fight?" The gaze that was like sword light caused the Sacred Fire Order's patriarch to feel a chill in his heart. He took a step back, let out a cold snort and said, "Junior, I have no feud with you. Of course, I won't care if your empire kills each other. I'll spare your life for now. As long as you don't commit any crimes in my sand country, I won't take the initiative to suppress you either." As he spoke, he turned into a stream of fiery light and dissipated into the horizon. It was not easy to cultivate to Tier 5 of the divine level. Moreover, how could the Sacred Fire Order's patriarch bear to give up the glory and wealth he had accumulated over the years? It was because his cultivation was strong enough that he treasured his powers greatly. How could he be willing to risk his life against Fang Xinjian for the sake of the fifth prince and the others? He left after leaving behind some pleasantries. Lady Velia said furiously, "This cowardly rat." The fifth prince knelt down on the ground. His body was extremely illusory, as if it would dissipate at any moment. He watched as countless martial wills dissipated from his body, and the supply of wills from the 1,000-year ancient battlefield was completely destroyed. He looked at Fang Xinjian and bellowed, "Fang Xinjian, either you kill me today, or I'll wipe out your entire clan one day, be it 10 years or 100 years later. I'll make you regret what you've done today for all eternity." Having been crippled once again, even with the fifth prince's shrewdness and will, he felt like he was on the verge of collapsing. He also hated Fang Xinjian so much that he gnashed his teeth. Fang Xinjian threw him a cold glance and said, "There's no need to kill you. From today onward, as long as you attain the divine level once, I'll strike you down once. You won't be able to hide from me no matter where you go. If you don't believe me, you can give it a try." Hearing Fang Xinjian's words, the fifth prince drew in a cold gasp and was so infuriated that his entire body trembled. His martial will flashed like it was going to break down at any moment. The chaos which watched the entire process from the side. She understood that she could no longer stop Fang Xinjian at this moment and place. However, countless schemes seemed to be flashing in her eyes. Fang Xinjian must die. He's completely out of control. Even if we choose someone else, he must still die. Chapter 723. Having been defeated by Fang Xinjian 3 times consecutively and having his powers crippled by Fang Xinjian today, the fifth prince was so infuriated that his entire body was trembling. He was in a state where he wanted to flare up but had nowhere to vent his anger. This almost drove him crazy. This was especially so when Fang Xinjian said that the moment the fifth prince stepped into the divine level, he would come and cripple him. This made the fifth prince feel both furious and terrified at the same time. It was because he knew that Fang Xinjian really had the ability to do so. This caused the fifth prince to look at Fang Xinjian with a gaze filled with both fury and fear. Just then, with a single thought, Fang Xinjian channeled a stream of sword intent into the fifth prince's body. At the next moment, he threw a glance toward the princess and the fifth prince. He could not be bothered to say anything more, and with a move, he disappeared. The fifth prince dropped to his knees and punched the ground. However, he could not even leave a fist mark. Instead, his martial will, which was already weak to begin with, flickered as if it would collapse at any moment. Lady Velia bellowed furiously, "Chaos Witch! Where are you? What did you say earlier?" Right now, Fang Xinjian has completely lost control. If this goes on, who will be able to stop him? At the next moment, The Chaos Witch's voice drifted into his ears and gradually dissipated. Someone will deal with him. Elsewhere, Fang Shijian moved at lightning speed. Guided by his sudden inspiration, he arrived at a stretch of hills in the blink of an eye. Countless sword intents moved about in space, scanning out toward the forest within a range of several hundred lis. In the blink of an eye, his body flashed once again, and he appeared at the entrance of a cave. Fang Xinjian's gaze flickered slightly, and he headed toward the cave. His walking speed was very fast, as if a gentle breeze was blowing past the depth. Not a single sound could be heard, but in the blink of an eye, he had already entered deep into the mountain. However, along the way, everything in the cave seemed to have been moved away, leaving nothing behind. The last aura I sensed from the sudden inspiration is here, but there's nothing left. Did the other party sense it beforehand and moved away? Fang Xinjian's eyes flickered slightly. Suddenly, he slashed out with his right hand's sword fingers, cutting open a big hole in the soil beneath his feet. In just a few moves, he had dug out a big hole, and a piece of metal sheet appeared in the soil. Fang Xinjian stretched out his hand, and the piece of iron sheet appeared in his hand. This iron sheet was obviously broken in half. The words Asia Pacific could barely be seen on it, and there was no other information. Looking at the two large Chinese words, Fang Xinjian frowned slightly. Is it another relic like the Heaven's Volition sword intent and the dragon's scale? Based on Fang Xinjian's observations along the way, as well as sensing this piece of metal sheet under the soil, the cave he had discovered should be an ancient relic. However, during this period of time, a certain influence had discovered this relic. Not only had they opened up the relic, but they had also emptied the relic before Fang Xinjian had arrived, causing him to come back empty-handed. Moreover, from the Chinese words, Asia Pacific on the metal sheet, Fang Xinjian suspected that this place was also related to the Heaven's Volition sword intent he had discovered from the dragon's scale previously. Is it from some era in ancient times? To think that it's written in the same language as Chinese? What's the connection between them? After searching the relic in detail and ascertaining that there were no other discoveries, Fang Xinjian returned to midair with a flash. This time around, he once again used his sudden inspiration to sense danger, but he could not sense anything at all. There's no more danger? Or could it be that they've hidden somewhere that even the sudden inspiration can't sense? Fang Xinjian threw a contemplative glance at the relic under his feet. Then at the next moment, with a flash, he returned to the Great Western region. Since he could not sense anything, he decided not to bother about it for now. After all, his subordinates would be able to nurture a certain level of self-protection abilities within a short period of time. On a huge grassland, the entire sky was just a screen of light. There was neither a sun nor a moon. The entire world seemed to always be in the best sunlight, the best weather, the most suitable humidity, and the most comfortable oxygen level. Looking at the vast grassland, the Jade Dynasty's top scholar, Grand Duke Alba, sighed and said, "What is this place? This living environment is like the legendary paradise. Living here, one will probably never have to worry about food and water." Behind Grand Duke Alba was the church's Saint Luoluo from 3,000 years ago, as well as Shang's leader, True Lord Qingshan, who had come from ancient times and had lived before the first onslaught. This is Shelter 091. The environment isn't bad, but it might not be paradise. True Lord Qingshan walked forward slowly, with Saint Luoluo and Grand Duke Alba following behind him. Ever since they had followed True Lord Qingshan's guidance, they had found an ancient relic and discovered a large number of terrifying weapons from ancient times. There were even a large number of powerful physical bodies that were suitable for divine-level experts to live in. This allowed Shang's countless reincarnators to be reborn once again. They joined forces with the Krieg royal family and became a powerful influence. However, this time around, True Lord Qingshan had left most of his people in the palace. He had only brought Saint Luoluo and Grand Duke Alba to this so-called shelter. "Why have we come here?" Saint Luoluo asked. "Fang Xinjian is getting stronger and stronger. We should kill him as soon as possible to avoid the arrival of the seventh onslaught. Scions won't die so easily. If we can't kill them in one go, they'll become even stronger after being seriously injured," True Lord Qingshan said. "Therefore, we still need to accumulate power, especially the power of the Krieg royal family and the Mage Association. Never underestimate Fang Xinjian. His potential and his strength are far beyond your imagination. Without complete preparations, I won't fight against him. And once we do, we must kill him with a single blow, not giving him any chances. Join forces with the Mage Association and the others," Saint Luoluo said with a frown. As the Church's saint from 3,000 years ago, she instinctively did not trust the Mage Association. Grand Duke Alba shook his head and sighed. "There's no other way. The internal strife in the Church is getting more and more serious. Right now, the fight between the three saints has reached its climax. They don't care about the situation here at all. We can only rely on ourselves." Previously, they had also gotten Saint Luoluo to contact the Church, hoping that they could join forces to attack Fang Xinjian. It was a pity that the Church was said to be fighting even more fiercely than the empires. So, how could they possibly send reinforcements to the empire? Even the only divine-level expert left in the empire, the Holy Orison, had headed north to the Church. Therefore, our current powers are limited. The Krieg royal family, the Mage Association's experts of the black, gold, purple and red factions. True Lord Qingshan said with a frown, "It's a pity that the mages from the various factions in the Mage Association are too scattered. If only the silver, cyan, and green factions could join in as well." Chapter 724. "That's not very possible," Grand Duke Alba said. "The 12 factions of mages from the Mage Association have already been dispersed. Putting aside the silver, cyan, and green factions, they are at least still in this world. The gray-robed faction has already suffered a great deal of damage, the yellow-robed faction doesn't participate in any battles, and the blue-robed, pink-robed, and orange-robed factions have all left the world. We can only rely on ourselves." True Lord Qingshan and the other two stopped before a small white house. This was a small white building located in the plains. It was merely the size of a 2-story building, just like an ordinary building in a village. There was nothing special about it at all. However, when True Lord Qingshan looked at this small building, he revealed a nostalgic gaze. Shelter 091 is a subspace that was opened up in our era. Here, Fang Xinjian won't be able to sense us, and this small building before us is a virtual reality cultivation room. I'll enter it to train in seclusion. The day I come out of seclusion 1 month later will be the day when the evil god ritual will be held. After the ritual is completed, it'll be time for us to suppress Fang Xinjian." When Fang Xinjian arrived at the Great Western region, the first thing he did was to look for Tyrant. With a toss of his hand, he tossed Adam's blood before Tyrant. Sensing the terrifying power contained in the drop of blood, Tyrant's countenance changed, and he said, "What is this? Is this the blood of the heavens?" With a casual scan with his martial will, he could sense that the power contained in it was several hundred times stronger than his own. Fang Xinjian explained, "Adam's blood is said to be a drop of blood from Adam, the founder of the ancient path of hell. However, at Adam's level, he should no longer have any blood left. Therefore, I don't know what it is either. However, it should be able to strengthen your martial will. Consume it carefully. Don't be confused by the remnant information in it." Hearing about the origins of Adam's blood, Tyrant's gaze gleamed with excitement. This is good stuff. This is really good stuff. The first thing he thought of was not to use Adam's blood to increase his powers. Instead, He wanted to sacrifice it to the evil god and exchange it for powerful black magic or creatures from another world from the gray demonic god. However, Fang Xinjian did not care why the other party wanted to use Adam's blood. With a casual toss, he tossed Bu's flesh and blood to the other party. "This is something that I snatched from the world annihilation, Heavenly Lord. Take a look and see if it's useful." Whether it was Bu's flesh and blood or Adam's blood, they were both related to the physical body, so it was appropriate to hand them over to Tyrant for research. Looking greedily at the Bu's flesh in front of him, Tyrant was already studying it excitedly. After leaving Tyrant, Fang Xinjian went to where the fourth prince and Philip were. With a swing of his hand, he tossed out Adam's blood. The fourth prince said in astonishment, "This is Adam's blood? God, this thing really exists?" Fang Xinjian asked puzzledly, "You know of it? Legend has it that Saint Adam has never been injured in his entire life. He only fought with the leader of the northern sacred land, the formidable divine King Dante, and left behind 9 drops of blood. Each drop contains Adam's powers and martial arts," the fourth prince exclaimed as he stared at the 4 drops of blood. However, Fang Xinjian shrugged nonchalantly. "Take them and use them. Try to increase your powers as much as possible. In the coming years, there will be endless experts from all walks of life. You'll need to be at least at Tier 3 of the Divine level, and it's best if you're at Tier 4 of the Divine level. Only then will you truly have the power to self-detonate." After making arrangements for the various matters in the Great Western region, Fang Xinjian announced that he would be going into seclusion and sat quietly in a secret room in the sacred land. 2 hours later, a stream of light dashed out beyond the heavens. Fang Xinjian was striving for the 3rd level of the 9-tiered heavens, hoping to reach Tier 4 of the divine level, comprehend the profoundness of the past and future, and grasp the sudden inspiration ability. He wanted to work together with the sudden inspiration from the 10th level of the mystical prince to find Lilia's location. In that instant, he pierced through the atmosphere and arrived before the 3rd level of the 9-tiered heavens. It was still the same feeling as the previous level. Fang Xinjian felt as if countless lights and shadows had flashed across his thoughts in that instant. It was as if only an instant had passed, yet it was also as if 1,000 years had passed. All of time and space seemed to have become meaningless at this moment. By the time Fang Xinjian reacted once again, there were already endless sparks before him. This is? What dense energy! At the next moment, countless sparks gathered toward Fang Xinjian, and the many cracks on the heaven-connecting sword physique gradually showed signs of recovering. Earth, United States, Washington, D.C. In NSNA's Space Science Department, Vice Head Victor looked at the image report before him and asked with some puzzlement, "What is this?" Standing before him, a researcher said, "This is the latest image we've taken from the Sun's surface. About 12 hours ago, we discovered that this small black spot had suddenly appeared. At the beginning, we thought that it was the Sun Heisei. However, over the past 12 hours, this black spot has expanded rapidly. Right now, it's about the size of half of the United States. Moreover, its temperature is already below 3,000 degrees Celsius. This makes it at least 3,000 degrees Celsius lower than the surrounding Sun's surface. This makes it appear pitch black. This is a far lower temperature than ordinary Sun Heisei. We suspect that this isn't just the Sun Heisei. Don't add in your subjective judgment, Chief Victor said calmly. If it isn't the Sun Heisei, what could it be? Someone is putting out a fire on the sun?" He shrugged, thinking that he had made a good joke. However, the researcher opposite him did not seem to be smiling at all. "Chief, this is a very serious matter. Based on my observations, this black spot has not weakened in the slightest over the past 12 hours. If it continues to expand at this rate, within 3 months, more than 1/3 of the entire star's area will be enveloped by this darkness," the researcher said as he pushed up his glasses. The researcher pushed up his glasses and said, If this happens, the entire Earth will face an extremely cold climate. We will lose more than 30% of light and heat. That will be the end of the world, and this might not be his limit. 48 hours later, in the command center of the United States Space Administration, a series of shocking data was displayed. It's still expanding. Its radius has already reached Earth's radius. Oh my God! Looking at the scene before him, the director of the United States Space Administration, Charlie, gasped. Just then, a female assistant walked over and said, "Director, it's a call from the President." The director took the phone, and a deep voice came from the other end. "I understand the situation. Is there any way we can change it? The Sun is a total of 1 million kilometers away from us. Even with our current most advanced spaceships, it will still take a few months for us to reach the Sun." "I understand now. Then what solution do you think there is?" "The black spot appeared about 50 hours ago, and its rate of expansion has not changed at all. The decreasing temperature has not changed at all either, and even the area of expansion is circular." The director paused for a moment and said, "This makes me suspect that there are spaceships that far surpass our civilization that are replenishing energy on the surface of the star. We should try to send a signal to communicate with them." At the same time, countless astronomical organizations across the entire Earth had also observed that huge black spot on the Sun. This was news that could not be hidden at all. As the shadow of the black spot on the Sun continued to expand, all sorts of discussions about the end of the world and the Earth being sealed in ice started to spread, causing an uproar. Chapter 725. Amidst the vast universe's vacuum, this place was encompassed by intense flames. There were piercing flames everywhere. Streams of huge fire snakes leaped out, jumping to and fro on a scale that could encompass the Earth's radius. The intense changes in the magnetic field, the high temperature of over 6,000 degrees Celsius, and the light that could blind any living creature made this place a hell for all living creatures. This was the Sun's surface, a place where no living creatures should exist. A man wearing a white cape and a white battlesuit stood on the Sun's surface. He even exposed his palms, head, hair, and eyeballs. However, no matter how high the temperature rose or how the intense moving plasma struck his body, they were unable to change his physical structure in the slightest. Even the battlesuit he was wearing was not damaged in the slightest. The man had a head of brilliant golden hair and a pair of dark blue eyes. He looked as majestic and fit as the sun god, Apollo. Looking at the fiery hell before him, the man smiled and said, "Peter, can you hear me?" "Yes." At the next moment, a cold male voice rang out in the man's mind. "The vibrations in your throat transmitted the sound waves to the receiver at the back of your head. They were then transmitted to me through the quantum communication device. Thankfully, you lowered your defenses and allowed me to place the device into your body. They don't seem to have suffered any damage. Try shaking your head." The man in the flames moved his head a little, and the man called Peter said, "There's no problem. The delay is about 0.2 seconds. "Amazing," the man in the cape said. The cloaked man said, "It took me 52 hours to fly to the sun's surface. Even sunlight would need at least 8 minutes to cross this distance. When did you invent this quantum communication device?" "Just 60 hours ago. We don't have time to chat idly. Search for the target, Caesar." Peter's voice was cold and rational. "The Earth has become a mess. If we don't resolve this quickly, humans will kill themselves before the Earth is sealed in ice." "Understood." Caesar's gaze tensed up, and his expression turned grim. His eyes narrowed, seeming to be able to see through the layers of flames and see the scene that was several hundred kilometers away. "I didn't discover any abnormalities." Peter's voice rang out in Caesar's mind. "Search in the direction 21 degrees to the west. That should be the center of the black spot." Caesar nodded. Then he dashed out, leaving a long trench in the sea of flames on the sun's surface. He dashed toward his target at a speed of Mach 200. The violent plasma collided with his body, forming a dense plasma cloud. They overlapped and collided with each other, continuously covering Caesar's body, forming a continuous nuclear explosion. However, similar explosions were happening on the Sun almost every minute and second. However, they were unable to harm Caesar, who was moving at high speed. It was as if his surroundings were covered with an invincible layer of defense. No matter how high the temperature and explosions were, they were unable to harm him at all. Even the clothes on his body could not be damaged. As Caesar continued to advance, the temperature in the surroundings plunged rapidly. In the blink of an eye, it had reached 500 degrees Celsius. This was still considered a high temperature on Earth, but it was an unbelievably low temperature on the Sun's surface. All the heat seemed to be absorbed by a black hole. Continuing forward, Caesar felt the temperature drop again. When the temperature reached 100 degrees Celsius, a huge black sphere appeared in front of him. As far as the eye could see, the flames had disappeared. Under the temperature of 100 degrees Celsius, there was no intense plasma movement in the surroundings. There was only a black object that looked like a pool of water floating in midair. Unbelievable! Caesar looked at the black sphere before him, circled around it, and asked, "Did you discover anything? This is an absolute black body?" Peter's voice rang out in Caesar's mind. "No, it's impossible for such a thing to exist. However, it should be absorbing all the heat radiation from the Sun. Let me think. It was a pity that the Sun was too far away, and the environment was too harsh." Peter was unable to get Caesar to bring more detection devices to the Sun. However, Caesar slowly moved closer to the floating black sphere and said, "Is this the culprit? Let me test its prowess." With that, before Peter could stop him, Caesar had already punched out fiercely. It was as if 1,000 nuclear missiles had exploded out of thin air, and violent powers surged out toward the black sphere. At the instant his fist collided with the black sphere, densely packed cracks spread out in all directions with his fist as the center. Kacha kacha. Seeing that the cracks were increasing in number, and pieces of black solids fell off, Caesar scratched his head and said, "It seems that I've succeeded?" "Be careful," Peter said. "This might be a weapon of some kind of artificial intelligence. Then it's an enemy." Caesar grinned and punched out with both his fists at the speed of lightning. Each punch had the power to shatter Taiwan into two, to set off a nuclear winter in half of Asia, and to create another great tsunami in Indonesia. The terrifying fist force landed on the black sphere's body one after another. There seemed to be a rumbling sound ringing out in void space, and the entire sphere instantly shattered into countless black fragments. As the black sphere shattered, a human figure that was filled with a myriad of white light was revealed. It was as if the entire Sun had been stuffed into a human body. Even though the light that burst out from the human body had been weakened by many layers, it still caused Peter, who was watching the video far away on Earth, to let out a muffled groan. He covered his bloodshot eyes and burst into tears. "It's an extraterrestrial life form. He's the one who created this disaster." Fang Xinjian opened his eyes and sensed that the injuries on his heaven-connecting sword physique had mostly recovered, and the cracks all over his body had almost all disappeared. Seething energy that far surpassed what he had felt in the past continued to seethe and roar in his body, causing his body to emit a brilliant white light. It was as if he was a sun that kept on burning and exploding. With a single thought, the shattered black sphere and the surroundings once again turned into streams of martial will. They instantly turned from a solid state into green smoke, and were absorbed into his body. At the same time as he withdrew his martial will, he turned his head and saw Caesar, who had destroyed the black sphere earlier. Looking at the light figure's gaze, Caesar felt his scalp turn numb. It was as if countless sharp swords had pierced through his body. "Are you the one who created the shadow on the Sun?" Fang Xinjian did not reply. He merely scanned the other party's body with his martial will and sensed a dense amount of ether particles emerging from the other party's body. It was similar to that of a conferred knight, but there were also differences. It was because the other party's body was still composed of molecules and atoms instead of physical particles. You don't understand? I'm asking you. Caesar's eyes narrowed slightly. Then with a flash, he appeared before Feng Xinjian like a piece of land. He punched out, and it was as if an asteroid had collided into Feng Xinjian's face. What are you talking about? A mushroom cloud that was several thousand kilometers in size suddenly exploded. Brilliant white spots were born on the surface of the star, rapidly covering the shadow that had been cast over the past 48 hours. Chapter 726. In the United States, New York, in the secret base at the 12th underground level, Peter wore a black mask, a black cape, and a combat suit. He looked at the video in silence. It was the final recording sent by Caesar from the solar watch. Rapidly flashing afterimages, filling up the sky with explosions, and constantly colliding particle currents. The speed and power of both sides far surpassed the limits of humans. Even Peter was unable to see the battle clearly. He could only see a light figure appearing in the video at the end. The figure reached out a hand as if grabbing onto the entire screen. Peter knew that the other party had lifted Caesar up. At the next moment, the other party turned his head as if he had heard something. Then the video disappeared, and everything returned to darkness. Caesar's battle prowess is unquestionably the best among the extraordinary humans on Earth. His superhuman system has given him astonishing strength, speed, and resistance to attack. Peter's gaze was filled with grimness. If even he is unable to defeat this extraterrestrial life form, we must unite everyone's powers. As he spoke, Peter switched on another computer screen next to him. A human figure formed from distorted light rays said in a cold robotic voice, "Mr. Peter, are you sure you want to activate the number 0 production line? Confirm activation. Nicholas, you'll be in charge of monitoring the number 0 production line. Report to me immediately if there are any abnormalities." In that instant, everyone in New York seemed to have felt the ground tremble slightly. Peter had already disappeared into the dark corridor. My black technology system can allow me to exchange for all sorts of unimaginable technological product. However, humanity's current level of moral awareness is not enough for them to grasp these dangerous powers. As Peter stepped into the darkness, many lights lit up, revealing all sorts of exoskeleton armors, psychokinetic weapons, bionic mechas, nanobugs, and many other high-tech weapons. They had all been sealed in the underground base by Peter, but now, I can't care so much anymore. Facing an unprecedentedly powerful enemy, Peter decided to do everything he could to strengthen and unite humanity. Elsewhere, Washington, D.C., United States, at the Solar Spot Temporary Command Center. Has it been sent out? Edward, the Secretary of Defense, asked coldly. A total of 12 experts in human, language, society, psychology, and various other fields have jointly compiled a message. We will continuously send it toward the sun through electromagnetic wave signals 24 hours a day. We've already tried our best to explain our friendliness and harmlessness. The Department of Aeronautics and Astronautics is currently evaluating the possibility of space migration, but with our current level, a pessimistic and desperate atmosphere enveloped the entire venue. The sun was simply too far away from humanity. Even if humans tried their best, it would be difficult for them to interfere with the sun. The Minister of Defense, General Edward, asked, "Have you contacted Caesar?" Everyone's eyes lit up when they heard Caesar's name. 30 years ago, an unknown particle suddenly appeared on Earth. This unknown particle quickly spread through the atmosphere, reaching almost every corner of Earth. Just as the top laboratories were researching the unknown particle, the first transcendent was born. Subsequently, more and more humans were discovered to possess transcendent powers. The governments of various countries fought to set up supernatural management organizations, but gradually, they were unable to control the increasingly powerful transcendent. Fortunately, the strongest few among the extraordinary humans did not have too great of an ambition. They were still very kind toward ordinary people. In the end, they joined forces and set up two great organizations in the East and the West, the Radiant Congress and the Crimson Alliance. They worked directly with the governments of the various countries and managed all sorts of supernatural incidents in the world. I have yet to contact Mr. Caesar. The Radiant Congress did not give any explanation for this incident either. Caesar, who possessed the superhuman system, was the spiritual leader of the Radiant Congress. He had the title of Son of God and was publicly acknowledged as the strongest person on earth. Hearing that they had yet to contact Caesar, everyone's gazes dimmed. At the next moment, a staff member dashed in and shouted, "There's a reaction." What? A group of people filed out and arrived before the control podium. They then saw the scene of the sun being broadcasted on the huge screen. On the huge sun, a black circular spot kept on growing, engulfing the sun's light and heat bit by bit. However, at the next moment, a bright glow flashed out from the center of the black spot. Then a white light spot spread out rapidly, covering the entire black spot within a few minutes. What? It's disappeared. What on earth is going on? Just as everyone was feeling extremely puzzled, the black shadow appeared once again and slowly formed two letters. Okay, is it really an intelligent life form? They received our broadcast and stopped engulfing the sun? The leaders of the United States upper echelons looked at this scene with their mouths agape. A feeling of disbelief gushed up in their hearts. Had the first contact between humans and aliens started from them? Half an hour later, the entire conference room was in an uproar. They've accepted our friendship. This means that the other party isn't a cruel, cold-blooded, and warlike race. However, the other party has appeared on the fixed star as if there's no one else around, recklessly absorbing the sun's light and heat. With their abilities, how is it possible that they can't discover that our human civilization exists in the solar system? They don't care about us at all. We should immediately issue a mobilization order and enter a state of war. We must be ready to fight at any moment. For a spaceship to be able to appear directly on a fixed star, it's very likely that they already possess technologies such as superluminal flight, wormhole shuttling, and spatial warping. Their technology far surpasses ours, and our preparations are meaningless. Displaying our friendliness and the value of our civilization's existence is the only thing we can do. Coward, are you thinking of surrendering? Even if they can defeat us, we should still go all out. At the very least, we should tell this universe that we once existed. Elsewhere, in the sky above the sun, Fang Xinjian was slowly reading the information contained in the electromagnetic waves. Hello, guests from the vast universe. We are humans, a civilization located on Earth. We are located on the third planet from the Sun in the order of closest to the Sun. We deeply welcome your visit. However, if you guys continue to absorb the Sun's energy without restraint, it'll cause unbearable harm to our civilization. Please stop such rude and crude behavior immediately. As expected, it's another parallel world? Fang Xinjian threw a glance at the unconscious Caesar. But what's up with this guy? Fang Xinjian felt that this world seemed to be very complicated. When he thought of how the third level of the nine-tiered heavens contained the so-called profoundness of the past and future, he could not help but have a lot of thoughts. At the next moment, grabbing onto the unconscious Caesar, Fang Xinjian dashed out rapidly in the direction of Earth. Although he was unable to move at close to light speed while carrying Caesar, streams of intense particle currents gushed out from behind him, causing his speed to increase rapidly. There was no air resistance in the universe's vacuum. This allowed Fang Xinjian's speed to increase incessantly. Very soon, He surpassed 300 times the speed of sound and was still increasing. Chapter 727. In a certain summer palace in France. Although it was late at night, the palace was still brightly lit. However, in this palace that was filled with a classical aura, impetuous electronic music was playing. Amidst the colorful lights, groups of young men and women were wantonly showing off their liveliness on the dance floor. Occasionally, there would be men and women dragging their partners into dark private rooms or corridors. Then comfortable moans would ring out. The entire interior of the palace had been modified into a modern nightclub. If experts who loved ancient architecture were to find out about this, they would probably lament that it was a waste of heavenly resources. At the same time, thousands of meters above the sky, a small black fighter plane flew above the summer palace. The black fighter plane had a streamlined body. Under the mysterious black paint, one could see the arcs and protrusions of unknown functions, giving off a strong feeling of science fiction. As it came to a stop, 2 streams of plasma flames shot out from the bottom of the aircraft, allowing it to hover in the sky. "Nicola, activate alert mode." A cold electronic voice rang out from the fighter aircraft. "Yes, Mr. Peter." At the next moment, a pure black figure leaped down from the fighter aircraft. It was one of the leaders of the Radiant Congress, Dark Knight Peter. His entire body was encompassed in a layer of bright black armor, and a pair of huge black wings that were like the wings of demons spread out on his back. His entire head was also encompassed in a layer of black helmet, making it hard for others to see his face clearly. Only his right eye revealed a weak red light, as if he was constantly trying to detect something. The Death God armor had an outer shell made of space alloy that could resist explosions, high temperatures, and low temperatures. It was equipped with a portable nuclear fusion energy furnace, and in addition to the impact joints on its limbs, it could provide Peter with a propulsion force of over 5,000 tons. The demonic bat wings on his back were made of plasma-deformable metal, and they could undergo various physical changes under the constraints of magnetic field. They could turn into cloaks that could fend off the attacks of small-scale nuclear missiles, and they could also slash through a 100-meter-long battleship's armor plate like sharp swords. There was also the various miniature laser weapons, electromagnetic weapons, and photon current slicers that were installed outside the armor. This set of Death God armor, together with the battle techniques that Peter had trained hard for over 10 years, could allow him to be ranked in the top 10 amongst the many extraordinary humans on Earth. But it's still not enough. To an extraterrestrial life form like that, the Death God armor is still too weak. As he watched his body fall toward the summer palace, Peter thought to himself, "But the newest Hell armor blueprint has already been exchanged. I hope it won't disappoint me." The next moment, the black figure had already smashed through the roof of the palace like a meteor, landing in the middle of the dance floor amidst a series of exclamations. White lime powder continued to fall from the hole, and the youths who had been having fun earlier immediately retreated over 10 meters away, forming a circle around the Dark Knight. The red light in Peter's right eye flashed, and the surrounding thermal and sound wave images appeared in his eyes. A cold and stiff voice came from the armor. "Where is Elizabeth?" In the face of Peter's question, the young people in the surroundings burst into laughter. In the next moment, along with the roars of beasts, the young people in the surroundings opened their mouths wide, revealing their protruding canine teeth. Their eyes even emitted a scarlet glow. The men and women who had been hiding in the shadows came out as well. Blood trickled down the corners of their mouths, while the men and women who had been dragged into the shadows had fallen asleep with smiles on their faces. It was as if the entire dance floor had instantly turned into a vampire's lair. Sensing the hostility in the surroundings, the Dark Knight let out a cold snort and charged into the group of vampires. He was like a rampaging tank, and with a simple dash, he sent over 10 vampires flying out, breaking their tendons and breaking their bones. With a single punch, a vampire who had charged over had his face smashed, smashing through over 10 layers of walls and flying out. 5 vampires seized the opportunity and grabbed onto the Dark Knight's body at the same time. However, they were sent flying amidst the electric arcs, crying out agonizingly. They had been sent flying by the death god armor. The wings on the back of the armor flapped slightly, sending over 10 vampires who had charged over flying out once again. The physical attributes of these vampires far surpassed that of ordinary people. The strongest few could even unleash supersonic punches, slashing through human bodies with the shock waves created by their palms cutting across the air. However, before Peter, who was wearing the death god armor, all these were meaningless. "He's here. He's gone up. Be careful, be careful. He's right behind us. Get your guns quickly. Fools." 5 to 6 vampires charged over with machine guns in their hand. Amidst the metallic storm, Peter's body flashed with dazzling sparks. It was impossible for these gunpowder kinetic weapons to penetrate the death god armor. At the next moment, with a flash, Peter sent all the vampires who were holding on to guns flying. The death god armor was already an extreme level of equipment for individual soldiers. Peter himself was also a master of combat, stealth, and assassination who had trained for a long period of time. The dim lights, the mottled shadows of the walls, and the messy crowd. Everything became Peter's weapons. He darted about in the darkness, moving between the walls. When someone saw him, they would have already lost consciousness. Without using any of the external weapons of the death god armor, he managed to knock out over half of the several hundred vampires present. At this moment, a strong stench of blood came gushing over, and a slender figure slowly appeared. She walked upside down on the roof of the palace, like a reflection in a mirror, giving off a strange yet elegant feeling. The lady had a fair complexion, silver pupils, and long pink hair. She was wearing a leather jacket and a short skirt, and the fishnet stockings under the short skirt wrapped around a pair of slender, fair, and tender thighs. The appearance of a heavy metal lady did not match her elegant movements at all. "You guys aren't his match. All of you back down." The lady's voice had a hint of laziness and charm, but it caused the many vampires hidden in the shadows to feel a chill in their hearts, and they slowly backed off. Just like that, she walked up to Peter in midair. Then that lady said in a sweet tone, "Little cutie, why did you think of coming to look for me?" However, the Dark Knight did not let down his guard just because of the lady's gentle voice. Bloody Queen Elizabeth was a powerful, extraordinary human who possessed the vampire system. She was one of the most dangerous monsters on Earth, and the 712 tragedy that she had caused had once turned the entire Paris into a ghost city. Even though she had already joined the Radiant Congress, the Dark Knight had never let down his guard. After all, she was one of the few existences who could not be killed by Caesar in close combat. There were at least 32 backup plans to kill her in the hard drive of the artificial intelligence Nicola. The Dark Knight Peter said coldly, "A new system holder has appeared. He is extremely dangerous, and I need your assistance." Considering how dangerous the other party was, the Dark Knight did not reveal the news of Caesar's failure. The other party's answer was just as he had expected. "Not interested." Elizabeth suddenly hugged the Dark Knight's helmet tightly, and her blood-red and agile tongue slowly licked his metal mask. "Unless you're willing to do some interesting things with me." A strong charm burst out from her eyes, and it was enough to make any ordinary person die for her. However, at the next moment, violent electric currents burst out from the other party's central nervous system. The femtoid that the Dark Knight had implanted into her body had been activated. The micro-robot, which was 1,000 times smaller than the nanometer, had already occupied every part of her body along with her blood circulation. Even the Bloody Queen had yet to find a way to expel it. "Ah!" Agonizing cries rang out through the entire summer palace, and in the blink of an eye, the Bloody Queen had already dropped to her knees. One day, I'll remove the little thing that you've placed in my body and then suck up every single drop of blood in your body. If there's no problem, we'll set off immediately. The French garrison has already discovered the situation here. The Dark Knight grabbed the Bloody Queen, who had gone limp all over, and flew up into the sky. In the outskirts of New Mexico, United States, with a thunderous rumble, a stream of white light cut across the horizon. Fang Xinjian moved rapidly in the atmosphere, and then reassembled himself next to a road. He had already thrown Caesar into orbit around the Earth. Right now, Fang Xinjian was in the form of the heaven-connecting sword physique. A loose black robe was wrapped around his body, revealing his chest, abdomen, and soles of his feet. Standing barefooted on the ground, his martial will instantly scanned the area within a range of 100 lis. What a dense density of ether particles! This density is even above that of Miracle World. Just as Fang Xinjian was feeling emotional, the ear-piercing sound of motors rang out from afar. A group of motorcycle riders were heading toward his location along the road. Fang Xinjian took in a deep breath and said calmly, "The aura of humans." At the next moment, with a flash, he flew toward that group of motorcycle riders. Chapter 728. Sam was riding a motorcycle, traveling on the road with over 10 of his companions. They were a group of motorcycle enthusiasts and would often ride motorcycles together, traveling across large states. However, at the next moment, a black shadow suddenly appeared before them. It was a man who appeared to be naked, and seemed to only be wearing a black robe. Then, Sam's vision blurred and the man disappeared, causing him to think that what he had seen was an illusion. "It seems that I'm really too tired." In the sky, Fang Xinjian looked down at the motorcade that was leaving into the distance and mumbled, "I thought that with such a high density of ether particles, it would be a place like Miracle World. But in the end, it's still Earth's modern civilization? Let's wait and see." At the next moment, he turned into a faint phantom image and darted into the spatial gaps, sweeping his gaze across the United States. Although he could instantly circle around the entire Earth at light speed, when he transformed into waves and transmitted them at light speed, he would not be able to observe the outside world. This was meaningless. In the blink of an eye, he arrived at a modern town. Fang Xinjian was even more certain of the situation on Earth. This was indeed a world that was similar to Earth's modern civilization. Such a high density of ether particles. Is this the future of the parallel world that I arrived at previously? Or, with a flash, Fang Xinjian entered a small building. He put out a finger and inserted it into the socket. At the next moment, his consciousness wandered into the network. The grammar of English and Chinese is still very similar. But history is different. Huaxia and the United States, as well as the chairman and presidents, are no longer the same as before. Moreover, this world is now the year 2031. There are no passageways leading to Miracle World, but there are high density of ether particles. Fang Xinjian stroked his chin, already having some guesses about the world before him. He then thought of the extraordinary human he had met on the sun's surface previously. It's true that such a high density of ether particles will allow humans to possess extraordinary powers. Will I be able to find information on the network? As he spoke, he had already started to search for information regarding extraordinary powers. A young man had saved several hundred people from a huge fire. An adult man had lifted a truck that weighed several tens of tons. Some astronomy enthusiasts had observed flying humans in the middle of the night. Fang Xinjian could not tell if it was real or not. But the one who sent the electromagnetic broadcast to me earlier should be the government on Earth. They don't seem to know that the extraordinaire attacked me. It looks like the relationship between the extraordinaires on Earth and the government isn't very close. Still keeping the existence of supernatural powers a secret to maintain the stability of society? It's not a bad idea. After searching for a while, Fang Xinjian gave up on searching for more information on the internet. There was too much information on the internet. Even with the computing power of Fang Xinjian's brain, he couldn't easily search through it. It was better to put in some effort in the real world. That extraordinary human on the sun already possesses the battle prowess of a Tier 3 or even 4 divine-level expert. If we use him as a reference, then let's not attract too much attention. At the thought of this, Fang Xinjian gave up on the idea of attracting the attention of the world at the second level of the Heavenly Palace. After knowing the general background of this world, Fang Xinjian started to think about the profoundness of the third level of the 9-tiered Heavenly Palace. The third level of the 9-tiered Heavenly Palace would allow one to comprehend the profoundness of the past and the future. Fang Xinjian had guessed earlier that he had come to a parallel world. It was very likely that the timeline was in Earth's past or future. However, the appearance of the extraordinary human this time around, as well as the high ether particle density on Earth, made him think, could it be that this isn't Earth's parallel world but Miracle World's past or future? Is it possible that Miracle World could have developed into an existence similar to Earth in the past or future? However, at the thought of the dragon's scale, the Chinese characters on it, the Heaven's Volition sword intent, and the 2 Chinese characters Asia-Pacific in the relic, he could not help but feel even more suspicious. But if this is Miracle World's past, then what is the Earth that I came from? Why did Miracle World become like that? If this is really a parallel world of the past or future, then… Fang Xinjian's gaze narrowed. This won't do. There's still too little evidence. I need more discoveries. The more he thought about it, the more confused he became. Fang Xinjian decided to activate his sudden inspiration at full power. He wanted to search for the location of the fortuitous encounter. At the next moment, with a move of his body, he traversed across the sky and arrived in the sky above Los Angeles. In the quiet night, Fang Xinjian unknowingly landed on a street. He could sense that there was something or someone or something that would be of great help to him. His fortuitous encounter was about to appear here. A few minutes later, a red sports car cut across the long street like a red bolt of lightning, and a loud roar rang out through the street. The sports car passed by Fang Xinjian at lightning speed, its flashing tail lights disappearing into the distance. Fang Xinjian's gaze looked toward the disappearing sports car. That's her. In the sports car, an extremely beautiful blonde lady was stepping hard on the accelerator. She let out a cheer as she watched the streets flash past her at lightning speed. Not only did the blonde lady have a beautiful face, but her figure was also curvaceous. She could be compared to those top female celebrities in the magazines. She had a fiery disposition that could make any man gulp fiercely. She could be said to be an extraordinarily beautiful woman. Unknowingly, Fang Xinjian had already maintained a parallel state with the sports car. His marshal will scan the other party's body, and his gaze suddenly narrowed. Her stomach, a part of her body's structure, has turned into the structure of physical particles. At the sight of this scene, Fang Xinjian was astonished. She'll turn into the structure of Miracle World's humans in the future? She'll be the first knight. In that instant, countless thoughts flashed through his mind. If this place is Miracle World's past, then what is the Earth that I'm on? Why is it connected to Miracle World? Fang Xinjian shook his head, realizing that he could not make sense of the relationship between the two. He decided to first guide the lady in the sports car and see if she would be able to cultivate if she really turned into the structure of physical particles. He wanted to know if she would have the stats window for attributes and skills. In that instant, he felt as if he was already extremely close to the profoundness of Miracle World. At the next moment, Fang Xinjian suddenly sat in the front passenger seat of the sports car. He looked at the blonde lady and asked, "Do you want to obtain true power? Do you want to become stronger?" It was a pity that although Fang Xinjian's cultivation was very powerful and his martial arts were very profound, he was still a young man who was not even 20 years old. He still did not have a good grasp of the human heart, or rather, the human heart of ordinary people. It had been too long since he had come into contact with ordinary people. Fuck! Amidst a world-shaking and agonizing cry, the blonde lady stepped on the brakes fiercely. Amidst the ear-piercing screeching sounds, the sports car finally came to a stop, leaving behind 2 long tire tracks. The blonde lady glared at Fang Xinjian and said, "Who are you? How did you get up here?" She abruptly drew out a small silver gun from her bag and pressed it against Fang Xinjian's head. "Scram! Otherwise, I'll blow up your head." You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.